Chapter 167. Looking at that man's actions. Yen Zhaoge was rather speechless. What kind of fancy new playstyle is this? The man didn't stop moving. He laughed and said, "You came at the right time. I went to find you just now, but you were in seclusion. I was regretful that you missed my wine and tea." Yen Zhaoge held his forehead. "Using wine to brew tea. There really isn't anyone else. I know that you like wine, but can you not be so unconventional?" The man didn't mind. "You don't understand. Living in this world, we have to find some fun for ourselves." Yen Zhaoge face-bombed. "So you treat wine like soy milk and dip it in youtiao to eat, using wine to soak rice in soup. Now, you have a new way of playing, using wine to brew tea. Can't you drink like the other drunkards?" Xie Yuchan and Ahu couldn't help but laugh. The big man didn't seem to mind at all. Instead, he smiled and said, "I've passed that stage." Unable to bear it any longer, Yen Zhaoge said, "Then you can try drinking wine with your nose instead of your mouth." The burly man laughed heartily. "For a martial artist of my cultivation, it's actually not difficult. I won't choke to death. Senior brother Su, you're always very mature in other matters. Why are you acting like a child in this matter?" Xie Yuchan shook her head and laughed. This big man was precisely Broad Creed Mountain's direct disciple, the disciple of the Iron Lion King Shirtai, Heavenly Rock Su Fei, a Heavenly Connection martial practitioner. Generally speaking, he was also considered by the outside world to be Broad Creed Mountain's current strongest martial scholar. Su Fei smiled and said, "I'll let you taste my cooking first." Yen Zhaoge felt rather helpless. "I really have nothing to say about you. Junior apprentice brother, Yen, your alcohol tolerance is not good enough. Hu Ting is more like it." Xue Fei similarly looked down on Yen Zhaoge, instead looking warmly at Hu by the side. "Brother Fei, I'm not going to drink with you. You don't allow people to force me to drink with their gang qi. I'll die if I drink with you." Hu, who had always been careless and carefree, now looked pale. Xue Fei didn't force him. He only said regretfully, "Hu Ting, you actually have a good foundation. You can practice it." Everyone talked and laughed, and time passed quickly. As the sun set in the west, Yen Zhaoge, Su Fei, Ahu, and Xie Yuchan said their goodbyes. Before they parted, Xie Yuchan softly said, "This time's Heavenly Connection meet is different from the past. You all know what's going on, right?" Yen Zhaoge looked at Xue Fei. While the smile on Xue Fei's face did not change, his gaze was heavy and heavy. "When I met second apprentice uncle, I already knew of the situation." The three of them looked at each other and nodded with a smile. He said nothing more. Over the next few days, Yen Zhaoge either cultivated peacefully by himself, exchanged insights on the martial Tao with those he was familiar with like Su Fei, Yi Zhongzhou, Xie Yuchan, or fed that giant panda. On Clear Concealed Island, everything was as usual. As time passed, the day of the Heavenly Connection meet officially arrived. The Heavenly Connection meet wasn't a martial arts arena. Its original purpose was to allow the geniuses of the younger generation of the various families to interact with one another. Sparring was contact, and exchanging experiences was also contact. It was only because of the current environment of the Eight Extremities world. The situation was rather tense, so it caused the smell of gunpowder in the Heavenly Connection meet this time to be a little thicker, especially for this time's Heavenly Connection meet. Due to some special factors, it had a somewhat different color to it. It was precisely the venue where the Heavenly Connection meet would be held, in the air above Clear Concealed Island. With Clear Concealed Island as its center and the surrounding small islands at the center of Clear Concealed Lake, a special formation was vaguely formed, being the core of Clear Concealed Lake's protective formation. After it had been activated, numerous streams of light soared into the air, merging with the all-encompassing clouds. They formed a floating continent that seemed illusory whilst also real. Those numerous streams of light resembled bridges, allowing everyone to ascend to the floating island within the air. The island had its own restrictive formation. An illusory palace-like existence was formed. As Yen Zhaoge and the others ascended the floating island, they saw that other than the descendant of Turbid Wave Pavilion, who was the host, there were others who had arrived before them. They were people of Jade Sea City. Yi Zhongzhou, Li Jingwan, and 2 other Jade Sea City disciples were currently clustered around a green-robed youth. That youth had a gentle and refined air, resembling Feng Zhuan. He had a rather scholarly air about him. However, as he stood there, the spiritual light above his head condensed and became real, piercing through the horizon. Within the spiritual light, there seemed to be endless waves roaring, showing that he was a heavenly connection realm martial artist like Xue Fei. The youth looked to be in his 30s, his gaze as deep as the ocean. Seeing Yen Zhaoge and the others now, he nodded slightly. Yen Zhaoge and Su Fei nodded in return. They all recognized the other party, a core, direct disciple of Jade Sea City, a leading figure of the younger generation, the Seven Seas young master Song Chao. At that time, he was the oldest of the 4 young masters and also the one with the highest cultivation. The son of Broad Creed Mountain's first seat elder, Yen Di, the Broad Creed young master, Yen Zhaoge. The son of the chief of the Sacred Sun Clan, Huang Su, the world-illuminating young master Huang Jia. The son of the first seat elder of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, Lin Tianfeng, the thunder-rumbling young master Lin Zhou. The son of Jade Sea City's Lord Song Wuliang, the Seven Seas young master Song Chao. The 4 of them were all elites of the 8 Extremities world's younger generation, all of them of extraordinary backgrounds. After the previous Heavenly Connection meet, they had been hailed as the current 4 young masters. However, there was not much friendship between the 4 of them. Yen Zhaoge was only relatively more familiar with Song Chao. However, Song Chao was much older, and the 2 had seldom interacted with each other before. Looking at Yen Zhaoge, Song Chao nodded. Junior apprentice brother Yen, it's been 3 years. Senior apprentice brother Song's cultivation has improved. Yen Zhaoge smiled. Song Chao answered, cautious and conscientious, progressing forward through trial and error. Si Kongqing also came forward to greet Song Chao once more. The Heavenly Connection Meet's format was loose, with no sign of its official start. Those who wished to spar could just communicate with each other. Yen Zhaoge, Su Fei, Song Chao, Xie Yuchan, Wan Ping, and Yi Zhongzhou, these Xiantian martial scholars did not compete, only gathering together to chat idly. However, to them, even if it was just a casual chat, in the ears of the younger disciples, they all felt that they had benefited greatly. It was just that amongst them, Yen Zhaoge seemed a little more conspicuous. Of all the Xiantian martial scholars, he was the youngest, and not just by a little. The others were all around, or close to 30, with only Yen Zhaoge being in his early 20s. According to age, Yen Zhaoge should actually be of the same age as Li Jingwan and the others. However, even though this seemed a little conspicuous, not a single one of those present felt it strange, as though they were all used to it. As they chatted, the hearts of Yen Zhaoge and the others simultaneously jolted as they looked in another direction. In that direction, a few young martial practitioners dressed in gold-bordered white robes ascended Hovering Island. It was precisely the attire of the Sacred Sun Clan's direct disciples. Whether it was Yen Zhaoge, Su Fei, Song Chao, or Yi Zhongzhou, seeing the newcomers, they all narrowed their eyes slightly into slits. The one at the front was of a similar age to Su Fei and Song Chao, with a handsome face and an imposing appearance, a divine light shooting out from his eyes, causing one to feel admiration just from looking at him. Beside him was a youth who looked slightly older than Yan Zhaoge, his features ordinary, silent. Yan Zhaoge raised his brows slightly. Tang Yonghao, Huang Jia. Chapter 168. Other than Xiao Shun and Chao Yuanlong, the other two of the Sacred Sun clan's younger generation's 4 rising sons were currently in front of Yan Zhaoge. Acclaimed as the number 1 person of the Sacred Sun clan's younger generation, the radiant sword, Tang Yonghao, hailed alongside Yan Zhaoge as one of the current era's 4 young masters, the grandson of the east-coming martial saint Huang Guanglie and the son of the current chief of the Sacred Sun clan, Huang Su, the world-illuminating young master Huang Jia, after the Sky Connection Summit. Aside from the thunder-rumbling young master Lin Zhou, the other 3 of the 4 young masters who had been praised by others gathered together again. Yan Zhaoge's gaze paused on Tang Yonghao for a moment before turning towards Huang Jia. Whether it was the current 4 young masters or the Sacred Sun clan's 4 rising sons, Huang Jia was the most low-key one. In Yan Zhaoge's memories, other than that heavenly connection meet that year, Huang Jia had rarely appeared before the eyes of the world. At this moment, as he stood by Tang Yonghao's side, he was like a shadow under the sunlight, tranquil, and completely inconspicuous. Xue Fei and Song Chao looked at Tang Yonghao and nodded slightly. Senior brother Tang, long time no see. It was widely spread in the Fire Domain, where the Sacred Sun clan was located, that Tang Yonghao was the number 1 person of the current younger generation. He, who was in the Reaching Heaven state, was hailed by many as the strongest master martial artist outside of the Fire Domain. Especially in the Heaven Domain and the Water Domain, the martial practitioners of Broad Creed Mountain and Jade Sea City had never acknowledged this reputation. However, if one were to say that Tang Yonghao was one of the strongest experts of the younger generation, this was basically universally acknowledged. Even if Broad Creed Mountain and Jade Sea City were on extremely bad terms with the Sacred Sun clan, they would still acknowledge this point. Tang Yonghao stepped onto the floating island and bowed to Su Fei and the others. Greetings, Senior Brother Su, Senior Brother Song. Long time no see. His gaze fell on Yan Zhaoge, junior apprentice brother. Yan, long time no see. Yan Zhaoge smiled slightly. It is rare for senior apprentice brother Tang to make an appearance. Tang Yonghao said, breaking through from the heavenly connection stage to the great grandmaster stage. You can't just blindly cultivate in seclusion. You still need to accumulate experience and then cultivate in seclusion. Xikong Qing, Li Jingwan, and the other younger disciples were currently all focused on Yan Zhaoge and Tang Yonghao, who were standing facing each other. Yan Zhaoge's battle achievements in recent years had been glorious. He had defeated Xiao Shun, who was in the late outer aura stage with a cultivation of the middle outer aura stage, then defeated Ji Hanru, who was in the early Xiantian stage with a cultivation of the late outer aura stage, then defeated Lin Zhou, who was in the middle Xiantian stage with a cultivation of the early Xiantian stage, and then defeated Lu Shengfeng, who was in the late Xiantian stage. His skills shocked everyone, and his name spread far and wide. Not only were they able to fight those who were stronger than them, but they were also invincible. Fairly speaking, even without infinite boundless mountains' help in spreading the news, the current Yan Zhaoge of the Heavenly Connection Meet was already the person who stood the most in the limelight amongst the participants. Even if Yan Zhaoge were to turn around and return to Broad Creed Mountain right now, no one would be able to accuse him of anything. However, there was still a huge gap between him and the Reaching Heaven state. Moreover, a person's name was like a tree's shadow. Tang Yonghao had been famous for many years and was a top-notch existence among the connecting Heaven Realm martial artists. Generally speaking, with Tang Yonghao's current cultivation and age, there was actually already no need for him to participate in the Heavenly Connection Meet. His strength and talent had long been known to the world. Moreover, he was at the critical moment of breaking through to great grandmaster. However, the reason why the Sacred Sun clan had still sent Tang Yonghao out this time was at least partly because of Yan Zhaoge. In the previous battle of the Eastern Tang and the dispute over the Thunderbolt Soul Jade between the Heavenly Thunder Hall and Infinite Boundless Mountain, the Sacred Sun clan's face had been hurt. And in terms of the younger generation, Xiao Shun and Chao Yuanlong had been consecutively defeated by Yan Zhaoge, and all of them were utterly defeated. In the grand scheme of things, a slight change in one part would affect the entire situation. On the level of the younger disciples, it was a good chance for them to regain some face in this heavenly connection meet. However, Tang Yonghao had no intention of fighting with Yan Zhaoge, instead saying, "Junior brother Yan's improvement is truly shocking. In such a short period of time, you managed to advance from the internal invulnerability realm to the innate realm. I am ashamed of my own inferiority. I look forward to exchanging pointers with you in the same realm. Although I may not be as good as you, I believe that even if I lose, I will still gain something in the path of martial arts." Si Kongqing, Li Jingwan, Zhang Yao, and the others heard his words. They were all a little surprised. The faces of the Sacred Sun clan disciples who had come along with Tang Yonghao were all rather gloomy, feeling that it was a pity senior brother Tang still came according to his own wishes in the end. On the contrary, the expressions of Su Fei, Song Chao, Xie Yuchan, and the others were as per usual. Who didn't participate in the Heavenly Connection meet, but his age and cultivation base were actually similar to Su Fei and the others. Therefore, he had obtained special permission to accompany Yan Zhaoge to Hovering Island. He grinned, secretly sending a sound transmission to Yan Zhaoge. "Young master, rather than saying that this Tang Yonghao is upright, it would be better to say that he is pedantic, right?" Yan Zhaoge answered calmly. "Some people will always have certain things that others cannot understand, or view as foolish and pedantic. In the eyes of the masses now, it is already accepted that my strength can no longer be measured by my age and cultivation base in the usual sense. Even if Tang Yonghao makes a move, he won't be judged as the strong bullying the weak, having an unfair advantage. At most, some people will say that he lacks confidence, vanishing into the crowd, putting down his pride, sharing the views of the masses. If he doesn't make a move now, as you say, many people will instead think that he is pedantic and foolish, or perhaps blindly arrogant." Looking at Tang Yonghao, Yan Zhaoge said mildly, "But he himself is most clear on what exactly it is that he pursues, and what it is that he wants to persist in. To some people, having a clear conscience is the most important. What they fear is not the finger-pointing of others, but the haze that has appeared in their hearts. From another perspective, perhaps it can also be said that he is arrogant or perhaps self-satisfied. But as I see it, those who are able to persist in their beliefs and carry them out are all more or less worthy of respect." Hearing his words, Ahu looked thoughtful. Then how will he account for this to the Sacred Sun clan? Before his words had landed, Tang Yonghao swiveled to look at Su Fei. "Senior apprentice brother Su, you and I are of the same age, both being heavenly connection experts. Please guide me." Su Fei smiled carefreely. "Of course." Song Chao suddenly said from the side, "Senior apprentice brother Su, please let me pass. 3 years ago in the Heavenly Connection meet, this song lost to Senior Apprentice Brother Tang. I have always hoped to spar with Senior Apprentice Brother Tang once more." Hearing his words, Su Fei said, "That would not be good for Senior Apprentice Brother Tang. This Su has no intention of taking turns to fight him." Tang Yonghao's expression was as per usual. "It is not that I am looking down on Senior Apprentice Brother Song, but can I have a match with Senior Apprentice Brother Su first? Because this matter surpasses my personal honor and disgrace." Song Chao's expression was calm. I also have no intention of taking turns to fight him, nor do I wish to interfere in your competition. One move. We will decide victory and defeat in one move. How about it? A sacred Sun clan, disciple behind Tang, Yonghao muttered, "It shouldn't be heaven's surging tide, right? That really would be a single move." Jade Sea City's supreme martial art, heaven's surging tide, concentrated all the power of one's entire body to erupt in one go. While it consumed a great deal of energy, its power was similarly great as well, being a life-risking technique of Jade Sea City's martial practitioners. Hearing the other party's words, Yi Zhongzhou and Li Jingwan both had enraged looks on their faces. Song Chao still looked gentle and tranquil, not explaining anything as he just looked calmly at Tang Yonghao. "All right, one move." Tang Yonghao pondered for a moment before swiveling his head and saying apologetically to Su Fei, "Senior apprentice brother Su, please forgive me." Chapter 169. As the leading figure of Jade Sea City's younger generation, the Seven Seas young master of the current four young masters, Song Chao had his own pride and confidence. He really wanted to compete with Tang Yonghao. If it wasn't for the fact that Tang Yonghao and Xue Fei were bound to fight, Song Chao would definitely want to have a good fight with Tang Yonghao. And now, he had no intention of taking advantage of Tang Yonghao. If Tang Yonghao used up too much of his energy, it would seriously affect his battle with Xue Fei. Just this worry alone could put Tang Yonghao at a disadvantage. Most of the time, when experts fought, it was only for a single line. Song Chao had no intention of taking advantage of Tang Yonghao, and it was even more impossible for him to do as that sacred Sun Clan disciple had said, using a technique like the heaven surging tide. Seeing Tang Yonghao agree, Song Chao nodded, "Please advise me." With that, he struck out with his palm toward Tang Yonghao. Stellar energy surged, transforming into an illusory world. However, as a heaven-connecting stage warrior, the illusory heaven and earth formed by Song Chao's Gangqi was more realistic and condensed than that of a Khanate stage warrior. It was not just Tang Yonghao who was facing it head-on. Even Yan Zhaoge and the other spectators felt as though a massive wave that surged to the heavens had appeared before their eyes as well, smashing over towards them. As far as the eye could see, the boundless sea was boundless. The sound of waves was incessant, and tsunamis and landslides could be heard. Faced with this situation, Tang Yonghao straightened the middle fingers of his right hand into a sword and stabbed forward with the momentum of splitting the sea. A golden sword light that looked like a rising sun appeared out of thin air, and an aura that was as hot and warm as the sun immediately enveloped everyone of the sacred Sun Clan's direct lineage, one of the 7 great sun arts, the divine sword of dawn. Yan Zhaoge's gaze flickered as he raised his head slightly and looked upwards. The clouds in the sky dissipated, and a faint ray of sunlight shone through the layers of clouds. At the tip of Tang Yonghao's finger, a bright light erupted, as if some powerful existence was being nurtured. The sunlight in the sky above his head also frantically gathered towards Tang Yonghao's fingertip. In an instant, the light grew brighter and brighter. It was like a rising sun. The pale golden morning sun exuded boundless heat. It was as if 2 suns had appeared between heaven and earth. One was above their heads, and the other was right in front of everyone. The sword light was like the first glimmer of the rising sun, soft but not weak, light but not fierce. But the moment the sunlight came into contact with the sea formed by Song Chao's stellar energy, countless rays of light that were as bright and dazzling as needles appeared. It suddenly exploded into a ball of light rain, scattering in all directions. Every golden ray would explode violently the moment it touched the surrounding tide. Continuous explosions, endless explosions. Billions of golden rays collided with the boundless sea and exploded, The sea was like a dark cloud that had been dispersed by the sun. It rolled and retreated, fragmented, and finally turned into an endless rain of water droplets. Then, each of the water droplets was pierced by the golden light and shattered one after another, finally disappearing without a trace. It was as if the water on the ground had completely evaporated under the sunlight. Tang Yonghao sheathed his sword and stood. He looked at Song Chao and said sincerely, "Senior brother Song, thank you for letting me win." Indeed, Song Chao did not take advantage of him. To be more precise, the consumption of their stellar energy and physical strength was almost negligible. It was more of a competition of moves and comprehension of martial concepts. If it was a life and death struggle, victory and defeat would not be decided in a single move. Song Chao sheathed his palm and sighed. "I still lost to you by one move." He shook his head and turned to leave. He went directly to the edge of the floating island and sat down cross-legged. His intention was obviously to become a spectator. He no longer had any plans to continue participating in the heavenly connection meet. Tang Yonghao cupped his hands towards him. He then turned to look at Xue Fei and said, "Senior brother Su has waited for a long time. Thanks to Senior brother Song's concession, our battle will proceed as usual. I have not expended much energy and do not need to rest. Let us begin directly." Xue Fei held a leather pouch in his hand. A thick fragrance of alcohol wafted from it. He had been drinking while Tang Yonghao and Song Chao had been fighting. Now, he raised his head and drank the last mouthful of strong alcohol. He hung the leather pouch back at his waist and wiped his mouth, saying with a smile, "Although you only exchanged one move with Senior Brother Song, it allowed me to see many things. I especially gained an understanding of your current cultivation. You are an upright person. I will not take advantage of you." Saying so, Xue Fei stretched out his palm and pushed forward. Under the palm, the aura enveloped the surroundings like the firmament, the earth bearing the weight of the 8 extremities. The palm was simple and unadorned, even looking a little simple and clumsy. However, it was majestic, as if encompassing infinite profound principles. As this palm was unleashed, the eyes of all the Xiantian martial practitioners present all lit up. Everyone knew that while Xue Fei had a heroic personality, different from his master Shirtai, in terms of martial arts, he walked the same path. Like Shirtai, he was focused on a single martial art. Unlike Shirtai, who cultivated in the Vajrabhati, Xue Fei chose another supreme martial art of the 8 extreme arts, the Great Heaven-Earth Sword. Over the years, Xue Fei did not cultivate in other supreme martial arts of Broad Creed Mountain, focusing on the Great Heaven-Earth Sword. His attainments in this martial art were indisputably the #1 in the martial scholar realm. Even many martial grandmaster experts of the same clan could not compare to him. However, today, Xue Fei did not execute the Great Heaven-Earth Sword. While the principles and concept he executed were of the same lineage as the Great Heaven-Earth Sword, they were also different. It was not as simple as transforming sword intent into a palm or transforming sword arts into palm arts, much less using palm arts to execute sword arts. With the vision of Yan Zhaoge and the others, they could all tell that while Xue Fei's palm was still rather primitive and crude, it was clearly a new creation of the Great Heaven-Earth Sword, bringing forth new variations. This was a completely new martial art, a martial art that Xue Fei had created himself. While it was still incomplete, its potential was shocking. Ahu murmured to himself, "If Brother Fei continues to develop this palm art, perfecting it to the point of great completion, Broad Creed Mountain will probably have a 9th extreme art in the future." Standing with his palm, Xue Fei looked at Tang Yonghao, smiling carefreely. "This is just a little trick that I came up with in my free time. I've let everyone see a joke. While it is still hard to enter the eyes of the Fong family senior apprentice brother Tang, I can use both the sword and the palm. Martial arts of the same origin can be combined. Tang Yonghao nodded earnestly. Many thanks for the reminder, senior apprentice brother Su. After the two of them faced each other and cupped their fists, Tang Yonghao waved his hand, and a golden long sword appeared in his palm. The light was blazing but not dazzling like the rising sun. Xue Fei, on the other hand, reached behind him and pulled out a black broadsword from its scabbard with a dragon's roar and landed in his hand. The sword light was simple and unadorned, appearing and disappearing in an instant. One of them used the great heaven-earth sword style, while the other used the divine sword of dawn. The heavenly connection meet had just begun, and what was possibly the highest level of competition was about to begin. Seeing the swords of Su Fei and Tang Yonghao clashing fiercely, Yan Zhaoge could not help but nod repeatedly. Both live up to their reputations. He swiveled his head to look in another direction. There, the other Sacred Sun Clan disciples were all nervously watching the battle situation. There was only one person whose expression remained the same, not changing in the slightest, quiet to the point that it was as though he did not exist at all. The Radiant Prince, Huang Jie. To be continued. Chapter 170. Compared to his identity, Huang Jie could be said to be extremely low-key. It was so low-key that even his elegant title of the world-illuminating young master seemed somewhat unsuitable. Unlike the dazzling sunlight that illuminated the world, it was like the moonlight on a dark night, quiet and serene. Yan Zhaoge looked at Huang Jie, and Huang Jie looked back, calmly meeting Yan Zhaoge's gaze. Interesting. Yan Zhaoge raised his brows slightly. Yan Zhaoge was unable to determine Huang Jie's true cultivation base. He could only rely on his hearing to hear that the sound of his blood and pulse was virtually inaudible, heavy yet smooth. His blood was like lead mercury. This was a characteristic that only appeared after the second bone marrow cleansing. This meant that Huang Jie's cultivation was at least at the early stage of physical invulnerability. Apart from that, Huang Jie had intentionally concealed his aura, not revealing the characteristics of his other cultivation levels. It was very difficult to determine his specific cultivation level. The defining characteristic of a martial scholar in the middle stage of physical invulnerability was the ability to condense qi into a weapon and control qi within 100 steps. The defining characteristic of a martial scholar in the late stage of physical invulnerability was the ability to walk on stellar steps and levitate in the air. One of the characteristics of a Xiantian martial scholar was that their stellar energy had gained spirituality. Huang Jie didn't release his stellar energy, so he couldn't tell. The second characteristic was that the spiritual light above their heads pierced through the sky. However, if a Xiantian martial scholar wanted to, they could control and restrain it. Therefore, he could only judge that Huang Jie was at the early stage of physical invulnerability. Actually, considering his age, it wasn't surprising that Huang Jie was at the early or middle stage of physical invulnerability. Other than Yan Zhaoge, Jade, Sea Cities, Li Jingwan, and Infinite Boundless Mountains, Xiaoyu were all around this cultivation level. Huang Jie was slightly older, but not by much. They could basically be considered the same age. However, Yan Zhaoge instinctively felt that Huang Jie was not that simple. Compared to Tang Yonghao, whose cultivation realm and age were obviously much lower. If the world-illuminating young master Huang Jie, who was of similar age, and was similarly one of the 4 young masters of this era, truly possessed outstanding ability, he would step forward and battle Yan Zhaoge. This was the best for the Sacred Sun Clan. However, Huang Jie didn't seem to have any intention of making a move. Not only did he have no intention of clashing with Yan Zhaoge, Huang Jie was also polite yet distant towards others. The reason he came to the Heavenly Connection meet this time seemed to be just to watch from the sidelines. Those participating in the Heavenly Connection meet all stopped what they were doing at this moment. They focused on the battle between Tang Yonghao and Xue Fei. The battlefield was specially made based on the formations of Turbid Wave Pavilion, so Su and Tang could do as they pleased. The shock waves of their battle were all blocked, so they did not have to worry about affecting others. Previously, Tang Yonghao and Song Chao's fight was just a casual one. Now, however, Tang Yonghao and Xue Fei's fight was a true battle between dragons and tigers. The onlookers, including the few Xiantian grandmasters, had grave expressions on their faces. Although Lin Fan's cultivation level was low, after a rough assessment, they could all feel the strength of the two sides. Just like how Yan Zhaoge had suddenly risen to the pinnacle in recent years, suppressing all heroes with his skills, even the core, direct disciples of the various sacred grounds, while their talent and potential were on the same level as their combat prowess at the same cultivation level. If one were to look into it carefully, there would still be differences in strength to some extent. Xue Fei and Tang Yonghao were the strongest among them. With a sword in hand, Tang Yonghao's sword light resembled light illuminating the great earth, omnipresent. Not only did his opponent's silhouette seem to have no place to hide beneath the sunlight, even many of his opponent's techniques and variations actually seemed to be within his predictions. What his opponent wanted to do. Tang Yonghao was often able to be half a step ahead, countering his opponent's moves. Other than the Sacred Sun clan's direct lineage Divine Sword of Dawn, there were also many other supreme sword arts that Tang Yonghao wielded with ease. They all seemed to have been immersed in them for many years, having gained a deep understanding of their essence, their variations unpredictable and majestic. Fully focused on the battle between the two, Si Kongqing knit her brows slightly. Tang Yonghao, so strange. It's not strange. You find it strange because you don't know that Tang Yonghao is a true genius in the sword. Yan Zhaoge said, "It is rumored that in the current 8 extremities world, other than the 4 great sword arts, Tang Yonghao can learn all the other sword arts just by observing them from the sidelines." Si Kongqing's gaze flickered as she swiveled her head to look at Yan Zhaoge. Profound supreme sword arts were not as simple as just their stances and movements. The sword intent contained within qi circulation techniques, as well as many profundities, were all incomparably complicated. The martial arts of the various sacred grounds were all not easy to deal with. Yan Zhaoge smiled slightly. "Don't look at me, this is true. For example, in our clan's Great Heaven-Earth Sword and Big Dipper Sword, Tang Yonghao would be able to comprehend 70 to 80% of them just by observing me or you from the sidelines for a period of time. It's just that Tang Yonghao has never done this. When he cultivates in the sword, even if he cultivates in sword arts other than those of the Sacred Sun clan, they are also those that have been long lost. Even if he can understand the sword arts of other clans, he himself does not cultivate in them." Yan Zhaoge sighed. Lightly, it is not just the other 5 sacred grounds. Tang Yonghao also restrains the sword arts of those first and second-rate powers, even those unranked powers. Yan Zhaoge looked at the Tang Yonghao in the arena. "That is why I say that this is a person with his own persistence, even if his persistence, in the eyes of many, is hard to understand." Si Kongqing looked at Su Fei. Senior apprentice brother Su is not inferior to him. Yan Zhaoge smiled. "This is only natural." Regardless of Tang Yonghao's myriad variations, the winds howling and the waves roaring, Su Fei was like a rock within the sea, unmoving and unmoving. He executed the great heaven-earth sword all the way, possessing both offense and defense, simple and unadorned, majestic and majestic, containing myriad profundities within, causing Tang Yonghao to be unable to focus solely on the front. Executing the great heaven-earth palm and the great heaven-earth sword together as one, Their power multiplied as they blocked all of Tang Yonghao's myriad sword lights with ease. Observing the great heaven-earth sword, Tang Yonghao was able to comprehend the profundities within, predicting Su Fei's sword path. However, even so, he was still unable to gain the slightest advantage. In the martial scholar realm, Su Fei had cultivated the great heaven-earth sword to the maximum. Even if Tang Yonghao similarly cultivated in the great heaven-earth sword, it would still be impossible for him to do better than him. The clash between two heavenly connection martial scholars was a feast for the eyes of everyone present. Now, the descendants of infinite boundless mountain and the heavenly thunder hall ascended hovering Sky Island from different directions. On the heavenly thunder hall's side, the thunder-rumbling young master Lin Zhou and the lightning flash Yen Shan were both not present. However, their leader was a youth with a higher cultivation base, his age similar to that of Su Fei, Tang Yonghao, and Song Chao. Yen Zhaoge recognized him as Xie Zi, also a young heaven's favored son, who had long since made a name for himself, currently at the late Xiantian martial scholar realm. However, as Yen Zhaoge knew, while he had slain his opponent during a battle with a powerful enemy, he had also been injured, leaving behind latent problems. As a result, his ascension had been somewhat delayed. Otherwise, there was a 90% chance that he would already have stepped into the heavenly connection stage by now. Beside Xie Zi followed a few younger martial practitioners, similarly dressed as he was, all of them being of the heavenly thunder hall's direct lineage. And in another direction were the direct lineage martial practitioners of infinite boundless mountain. Indeed, Lu Shengfeng was nowhere to be seen, their leader being Ji Hanru. Right beside Ji Hanru, Zhao Hao's eagle gaze swept over everyone present, his gaze arrogant and unyielding. To be continued. Chapter 171. From a certain perspective, the martial legacies of infinite boundless mountain and the heavenly thunder hall were rather extreme. Before the matter of the thunderbolt soul jade, the young disciples of both sides had disliked each other. The heavenly thunder hall mocked infinite boundless mountain for having a tortoise shell, while infinite boundless mountain mocked the heavenly thunder hall for only having a head and 3 axes. Now that the matter of the thunderbolt soul jade had appeared, the two sides had officially become enemies. The atmosphere between them became even more tense. At this moment, the two factions just happened to meet head-on, to the point that they couldn't even pay attention to the match between Xue Fei and Tang Yonghao, the direct disciples of the heavenly thunder hall, with Xie Zi at their head and infinite boundless mountain, with Ji Hanru at their heads stared at each other, sparks seemingly rising within the air. However, those of infinite boundless mountain were even more quickly defeated. Without Lu Shengfeng, no one could compete with Xie Zi. Moreover, even if Lu Shengfeng was here, he would most likely not be a match for Xie Zi. Only Zhao Hao's gaze was cold, indifferent, and unyielding, and he didn't show the slightest intention of retreating. Xie Zi glanced at him coldly, but did not say anything. He looked away, obviously disdainful of fighting with an opponent in the inner invulnerability stage. Behind him, a youth close in age to Zhao Hao now smiled coldly as he stood up. This junior apprentice brother of infinite boundless mountain looks very unfamiliar. Let us spar for a bit. The corner of Zhao Hao's mouth revealed a faint, cold smile, and he said indifferently, "Sure." Yen Zhaoge looked rather interestedly at this scene, the expression on his face looking like he was smiling whilst also not. As Yen Zhaoge had predicted, Zhao Hao achieved a complete victory. Zhao Hao's performance also attracted the attention of others. Not only was it because Zhao Hao had displayed the cultivation of a late inner aura martial scholar, but it was also because his victory appeared to be extremely easy. Xigong Qing and Zhang Yao's gazes turned towards Zhao Hao. They belonged to the same age group. More than half a year ago, when I met him at Infinite Boundless Mountain, he was still only at the early inner aura stage. Sikong Ching swiveled her head to ask Yin Zhaoge, I heard that when we went to the Eastern Tang, he was only at the 8th or 9th level of the body refinement realm? As soon as he said that, to the side, Zhang Yao and the others all jumped in fright. Are you talking about before the War of the Eastern Tang? How long has it been? His cultivation has risen to this level, Yin Zhaoge said nonchalantly. Actually, earlier on, his cultivation base was even lower, and it is hard to say whether he was at the 5th level of the body refinement realm. About 2 years, maybe even less. Zhang Yao was somewhat speechless. Li Jingwan frowned slightly. Advancing realms quickly is one thing. At the same realm, his combat power is very strong. Yin Zhaoge smiled, but did not speak. This was within his expectations. Because everyone had different fortuitous encounters, there would be differences in strength among cultivators of the same realm. Although Zhao Hao's eyes were at the top of his head, his actual combat ability at the same level was indeed stronger than Lin Zhou and Yi Jing's. The lower the cultivation of the three, the more obvious Zhao Hao's advantage. And this advantage would last for a long time. Some of the Heavenly Thunder Hall's disciples had suffered a loss at Zhao Hao's hands. Due to his status, Xia Zi could not make a move. As for those of the same age as Zhao Hao, after witnessing his cultivation base, they too lacked confidence. With both Lin Zhou and Yen Shan not having come, a small gap in age had appeared in the direct disciples of the Heavenly Thunder Hall who had come this time, such that Infinite Boundless Mountain's Ji Hanru also had no opponents. The Heavenly Thunder Hall, wanting to get back at them, became extremely awkward for a time. In the end, it was still a female disciple by the name of Chen Lin who stood up, battling Infinite Boundless Mountain's Xiaoyu. Although Chen Lin was a woman, although Xiaoyu was a heavenly genius, his personality was cruel, his actions were ruthless, and his combat experience was rich. However, he was someone who could talk but not fight. Due to his lack of experience, Chen Lin was able to gain the upper hand as the Heavenly Thunder Hall finally managed to regain some ground. Ji Hanru and the rest did not say anything, but Zhao Hao's gaze towards Xiaoyu was not very friendly and was filled with disdain. On the other hand, the competition between Xue Fei and Tang Yonghao had already reached the climax. Both sides were locked in battle, although there was no enmity between them, even having some appreciation for each other. The two were currently going all out, not holding anything back in the least. Their battle had instead become the one with the most explosive smell of gunpowder since the start of the Heavenly Connection meet. In the process of their battle, there had been several instances where both sides had sustained heavy injuries, even nearly perishing together. It was a fierce battle between dragons and tigers, with it hard to determine who was superior. Although the Sacred Sun Clan and Broad Creed Mountain both hoped that their disciples would be able to obtain victory in this battle, if two seedlings with shocking potential were to perish together, neither side would be willing to see such a result. In the end, this battle could only be considered a draw. With the battle between Su and Tang having concluded, most of the spectators could finally retract their attention before beginning to search for opponents. Although having experienced the battle between Su and Tang, it was like having directly eaten a sumptuous meal. With everything else becoming dessert after the meal, the Heavenly Connection meet had finally officially become lively. On Hovering Island, while only the younger disciples of the various clans had ascended to participate, the bigwigs of the various clans who had come to clear Concealed Lake were similarly paying attention to the progress of the Heavenly Connection meet. Although they were all preoccupied with other matters, this did not affect them from observing the outstanding descendants of the various clans. In the Heavenly Connection meet, every year, many geniuses would basically appear, shocking everyone with their skills. However, Zhao Hao's performance was still very eye-catching. Fang Juan, how is this old man's disciple? A black-bearded old man said triumphantly, I'm telling you he's not inferior to your broad Creed Mountains, Yen Zhaoge. By the side, Infinite Boundless Mountain's elder, Shan Sherwing, had an indifferent expression on his face, but his gaze carried some helplessness. The person of Infinite Boundless Mountain responsible for leading the team to clear Concealed Lake this time was him, while this black-bearded old man, Elder Mo, having been active in the lake domain recently, had also come to clear Concealed Lake to join in on the fun. This old man's cultivation base was even higher than his. Coming here, he had the feeling of usurping the host's position, and it was not good for Shan Sherwing to compete with him. It was unknown how Zhao Hao had caught Elder Mo's eye earlier, being taken in as his personal disciple. Although Zhao Hao had indeed displayed powerful strength and potential with this Elder Mo's protection, it was also an important reason why Zhao Hao had been able to quickly extricate himself from the shadow of the giant spirit magnetite vein incident. Elder Mo glanced at Fang Juan from the corner of his eye. If you don't believe me, have your broad Creed Mountains Yen Zhaoge suppress his cultivation base to the late inner aura stage and spar with my disciple? Fang Juan smiled mildly. That will have to depend on Zhaoge's own intentions. Receiving Fang Juan's sound transmission, Yen Zhaoge laughed involuntarily. His disciple's cultivation base is not as high as mine. Is it my fault? A match is no problem, but I am not his disciple's sparring partner. If this senior is really so interested, how about second apprentice uncle help me ask if he would be willing to suppress his cultivation base to the mid-Xiantian stage and spar with me? If it's 2 matches, I don't mind coming down to train a bit. All right, Fang Juan answered leisurely. I'll ask. With this, there were no further words to be said. Yen Zhaoge shrugged nonchalantly, raising his head to glance up into the sky. This elder surnamed Mo was the highest level spy that the Decimating Abyss organization had planted in Infinite Boundless Mountain. To be continued. Chapter 172. P.S. The second chapter is guaranteed at the very least. Please cast your monthly votes and subscribe to it. Thank you. From Yen Zhaoge's point of view, after Xue Fei and Tang Yonghao's battle, the others' battles seemed somewhat lacking in meaning. The only match that could attract his interest was the match between Xie Yuchan and Xie Zi. Following Chunlin's victory over Xiao Yu, Xie Zi's victory over Xie Yuchan at the same cultivation level could be considered to have completely won back face for the Heavenly Thunder Hall. Zhang Yao's round face was bitter, but Wan Ping comforted her. Many people say that Xie Zi is the #1 grandmaster below heavenly arrival. There is actually some truth to it. This person's talent and potential are astonishing to begin with, and he's also used to fighting and killing. Along the way, he has many battle records of defeating stronger opponents despite being weaker than him. My current reputation was not obtained by bragging. Instead, I earned it with my cultivation. But it was also because he was so warlike that his vitality was injured when he fought with others. That was why he stayed in the late Xiantian Master realm for so long. Otherwise, he would definitely be like Su Fei, Tang Yonghao, Song Chao, and the others, stepping into the connecting heaven realm and preparing to attack the martial Grandmaster realm. Zhang Yao blinked, swiveling her head to look at Yen Zhaoge. Senior apprentice brother Xie's cultivation base is indeed powerful, but to say that he is the #1 martial scholar beneath heavenly connection is a little too much, isn't it? Not mentioning others, senior apprentice brother Yen defeated the late Xiantian stage, Lu Shengfeng at the early Xiantian stage. Wan Ping paused for a moment, then nodded. That's true. Hearing this, Yen Zhaoge didn't say anything. Looking over, he just happened to see Xie Zi's gaze also directed in his direction. The look in his eyes was not friendly at all. First, not speaking of the fact that infinite boundless mountain had let the heavenly thunder hall know that the thunder element revival art originated from Yan Zhaoge, the two core, direct disciples of the heavenly thunder hall, Yan Shan and Lin Zhou, who were also known as lightning flashing thunder rumbling, had both been defeated by Yan Zhaoge, having been heavily injured. Just based on this alone, the disciples of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, who felt that they had the ability, all wanted to battle Yan Zhaoge. He wanted to regain face for his sect. Xie Zi was one of the best among them, so he was naturally no exception. This was especially so with Yan Zhaoge's domineering rise over the past year, which had shaken his position even more. Xie Zi had always been an arrogant person. Because of his internal injuries, he had fallen behind Xue Fei, Tang Yonghao, and Song Chao by a step, the number one grandmaster below the heavenly reaching realm, could only comfort him. Many times, Xie Zi thought about it. He even felt that this was not a compliment but a humiliation, so he never mentioned it in front of others. However, it was one thing for Xie Zi to not accept it. It had originally fallen on his head, but it was taken away by someone else. This was another matter. Yan Zhaoge, having defeated the late Xiantian Lu Shengfeng as an early Xiantian martial scholar, instantly caused Xie Zi's title as the number one martial scholar beneath the Heavenly Connection martial scholar to become unstable. He was stuck at the late Xiantian stage. Xie Zi, who had already been suppressing a belly full of anger, immediately became even more displeased. He looked at Yan Zhaoge as if he were a thorn in his side. Yan Zhaoge roughly understood Xie Zi's thoughts. While he liked to show off, he really didn't care about being the strongest beneath the Heavenly Connection realm. Compared to Xie Zi, Yan Zhaoge's attention was currently elsewhere. There, it wasn't people who were facing off. Instead, it was two strange beasts, both of them extremely majestic, spiritual qi overflowing from their bodies, at the same time also containing a dense, masculine qi of blood. Yan Zhaoge blinked. What's going on? Li Jingwan answered softly. Junior Sister Chenlin of the Heavenly Thunder Hall rears a green evil ghost wolf. It is exceptionally ferocious. I heard that our clan's senior brother, Yi, also has a very famous black water mysterious dragon. Therefore, she suggested letting the two of them have a match. In terms of actual combat, taming powerful strange beasts could also be of great help. Gazing over, Yan Zhaoge saw Chenlin, who had defeated Xiao Yu earlier. She was currently standing there. Chenlin was extremely tall, only half a head shorter than Yan Zhaoge and the other men. Her features were beautiful, but her expression was cold, carrying some arrogance. The green evil ghost wolf in front of her was even larger than an ordinary cattle, its greenish-black fur appearing as hard as steel needles. The wolf exhaled a dense, cold white qi from its mouth, a cold, icy qi surrounding its entire body as its two bloodshot eyes that resembled copper bells stared fixedly at the black water mysterious dragon opposite it. Carefully appraising it, Yan Zhaoge discovered that this green evil ghost wolf was even stronger than its owner, Chenlin. Chenlin was of similar age to Yan Zhaoge, Li Jingwan, and Xiao Yu, and was currently only an outer aura martial scholar. However, the combat power of her green evil ghost wolf was already comparable to that of a Xiantian martial scholar. Such a situation was most likely due to her having begun taming this ghost wolf when it was still a cub. Yi Zhongzhou also looked at the two strange beasts below, with a stern expression on his face. Yan Zhaoge glanced at his black water, mysterious dragon. Coiling in midair, its size was much larger than that of the green evil ghost wolf. While it was a scaly dragon, and not a true dragon, it was still majestic and awe-inspiring. Yi Zhongzhou said slowly, Junior Sister Chen, it is not too late to stop now. These two strange beasts are both not ordinary. While their intelligence is limited, They are extremely powerful. If they enter a frenzied battle to the death, it would be very hard for us to stop them. Because of a battle between strange beasts, it would not be nice to trouble the seniors of our clan. Chun-Lin said mildly, "If green evil were to die beneath the claws of senior brother Ye's black water mysterious dragon, this little sister would definitely not have a single word of complaint. Since that is so, this he also has nothing more to say." Yi Zhongzhou frowned. The other party had come to provoke him, and he had already somewhat restrained his words, but the other party still did not know when to back down. Yi Zhongzhou was also enraged. "Let us begin, then." After the two strange beasts faced off for a moment, the green evil ghost wolf was the first to make a move. However, it was not in a hurry to attack, instead slowly moving around the black water mysterious dragon step by step, seemingly trying to find a weak point in its defense. The black water mysterious dragon coiled quietly where it was, not moving at all. However, its eyes were always fixated on the green evil ghost wolf, moving along with it, not letting go of any of its movements. The black water mysterious dragon had a clear advantage in terms of strength, but the green evil ghost wolf had a strange innate talent, which was to emit cold air around its body, slowly weakening the opponent's strength. The cold air would slow down the opponent's speed, which was equivalent to giving it speed up. The green evil ghost wolf's own speed was extremely fast to begin with, ranked at the top among strange beasts of the same level. Yi Zhongzhou whistled. "Do it!" He could already tell that the green evil ghost wolf was planning on stalling for time, constantly relying on the cold air to weaken the black water mysterious dragon's strength. Under such circumstances, the longer the battle dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for the black water mysterious dragon. The black water mysterious dragon let out a thunderous roar, pouncing towards the green evil ghost wolf like a tornado. As the pitch-black scales on its body opened and closed, large amounts of water vapor surged out like endless waves sweeping towards the opponent together. The green evil ghost wolf also let out a roar, biting and tearing at the black water mysterious dragon fiercely. A bloody and ruthless aura immediately spread out. At the end of the day, the black water mysterious dragon held the advantage in terms of strength. Very quickly, it suppressed its opponent into a disadvantageous position, only able to flee in a sorry state. The other spectating Jade Sea City disciples all had joyful looks on their faces, but Yan Zhaoge's expression instead gradually turned solemn, because he clearly discovered that the eyes of the disadvantaged green evil ghost wolf were filled with craftiness and savagery. To be continued. Chapter 173. On first seeing the green evil ghost wolf and the black water mysterious dragon, Yan Zhaoge had already frowned, vaguely feeling that something was wrong. While the black water mysterious dragon's body was majestic, it lacked some of the ferocious air unique to beasts. Clearly, it usually lived like a prince, not having experienced much actual combat. Meanwhile, that green evil ghost wolf of Chun-Lin's seemed ordinary, far from being as mighty as the black water mysterious dragon. However, its entire body was littered with scars, old and new, clearly having been through many life and death battles. Its entire body emanated a bloodthirsty, brutal aura. Yan Zhaoge carefully observed it for a moment in this battle. While the green evil ghost wolf seemed to be at a disadvantage, its dodging and shifting movements were extremely methodical, not seeming flustered in the slightest. It was as if it was intentionally using a guerrilla warfare method to deplete the black water mysterious dragon's stamina. Adding in the effect of the cold chi it was naturally emitting, it was clearly planning to prolong the battle, dragging it out until the black water mysterious dragon ran out of stamina before launching a frenzied counterattack. It was just that the black water mysterious dragon was really too strong. So even after dragging it out for so long, the green evil ghost wolf still hadn't found a chance to counterattack. However, if this went on for a long time, if the black water mysterious dragon didn't find a way to truly heavily injure the green evil ghost wolf, the situation would definitely be overturned by the other party. The green evil ghost wolf's tenacity and endurance were clearly extremely good, with ample battle experience. Instead, it was the black water mysterious dragon that had become more and more impatient after having its sharpness worn down. Senior apprentice brother Yi, something's wrong. If this continues, the black water mysterious dragon will be in trouble. Yan Zhaoge knit his brows slightly, sending a sound transmission to Yi Zhongzhou. Yi Zhongzhou was taken aback. As he saw it, the black water mysterious dragon currently had the upper hand. Yan Zhaoge said, "That crafty wolf is feigning weakness. It is intentionally using a guerrilla warfare method to deplete the black water mysterious dragon's stamina." Yi Zhongzhou's pupils abruptly dilated, and at the same time, a change suddenly occurred in the battle. After the black water mysterious dragon's clearly blind attack had missed, the green evil ghost wolf abruptly spun its body after having evaded its attack. All the strength in his body burst out and hit the waist of the black water mysterious dragon, who had not yet stabilized his footing. It was only at this moment that the green demon ghost wolf revealed its true strength. All the bones in its body vibrated, its muscles bulged, and its needle-like hair stood on end. Its entire body seemed to have doubled in size, not the slightest bit inferior to the black water mysterious Jiao. The black water mysterious dragon's attack had just missed, and before it could regroup, it was hit in the vitals by the opponent. Its huge and thick body was immediately knocked to the ground. The green demon ghost wolf did not show any mercy. It attacked the black water mysterious dragon with its huge mouth and sharp claws. In an instant, the black water mysterious dragon was heavily injured. The smiles of the Jade Sea City disciples all stiffened on their faces, Yi Zhongzhou's expression instantly turning ugly as well. The black water mysterious dragon let out a wild roar after being injured, and in great pain, it released all of its power and lifted the black water mysterious dragon. After throwing the green demon ghost wolf away, the enraged black water mysterious dragon soared into the air again and madly rushed toward its opponent, who had heavily injured it. After this strike, the green evil ghost wolf returned to its original listless appearance. It once again swam and fled, dodging the furious black water mysterious dragon's counterattack. Yan Zhaoge's eyes gradually narrowed, a cold light emanating from within. He could finally tell that this green evil ghost wolf was really extremely crafty. At first glance, it seemed like it feared the black water mysterious dragon that it had completely enraged. Actually, it was playing the same old trick again, making use of a roaming battle to wear down the black water mysterious dragon's spirit and stamina, especially now that the black water mysterious dragon was already injured, with blood flowing like a river. The longer it dragged on, the weaker it would become. This green evil ghost wolf's thoughts could be said to be extremely insidious, actually wanting to completely kill the black water mysterious dragon. It did not just want to win. Instead, it wanted to directly kill the black water mysterious dragon. Yan Zhaoge directed his gaze towards Chunlin. Others might not be able to see through the green evil ghost wolf's thoughts, but as its owner, how could she not know that her spirit beast was connected to her mind? Still remaining silent under such a situation, it was very likely that the green evil ghost wolf's actions had been incited by her in the first place. Senior brother Yi, take back the black water mysterious dragon. Yan Zhaoge said in a low tone, that wolf is using its old roaming battle method again. The black water mysterious dragon is already injured. If this goes on, if it succeeds in its sneak attack, its life might be in danger. Yi Zhongzhou's face was livid. He now also knew that Yan Zhaoge's words made sense. After a moment's silence, Yi Zhongzhou, also a decisive person, grit his teeth, and said in a heavy tone, "This match, I admit defeat." A hint of regret that was hard to detect flashed through Chunlin's gaze, as she revealed a smile that carried a hint of coldness. "Senior Brother Yi, thanks for letting me win. Now, it is still Senior Brother Ye's Black Water mysterious dragon that has the upper hand, chasing after my green evil ghost relentlessly. Since Senior Brother Yi admits defeat, please stop this Black Water mysterious dragon." Yi Zhongzhou's expression changed, finally still feeling sorry for the Black Water mysterious dragon, as he called out, "Blackie, come back." After the Black Water mysterious dragon had been enraged, the weakness brought about by its injuries had become more and more obvious. Hearing its owner's voice, it finally unwillingly gave up on its pursuit, halting its movements. However, just as the Black Water mysterious dragon had halted, a fierce light abruptly appeared within the blood-red eyes of the green evil ghost wolf, the power of its entire body erupting. Making use of the moment when the Black Water mysterious dragon's body and mind were at their most relaxed, it unleashed a fatal blow. The green evil ghost wolf's speed was as fast as lightning, let alone Yi Zhongzhou and the others. Even the Black Water mysterious dragon itself, who was just inches away from it, was unable to react in time. In the blink of an eye, its opponent's attack was already right before its eyes. A figure abruptly blocked in front of the Black Water mysterious dragon, punching heavily on the forehead of the green evil ghost wolf. The green evil ghost wolf was directly sent flying backwards. The newcomer was precisely Yan Zhaoge. Looking at Yan Zhaoge, Chunlin frowned. Recovering from his shock, Yi Zhongzhou roared furiously, "Junior Sister Chen, you're very good, ah." Glancing coldly at Yan Zhaoge, Chunlin summoned back the green evil ghost wolf that had been beaten dizzy and disoriented by Yan Zhaoge. Curtsying towards Yi Zhongzhou, the green evil has at the end of the day still not gained sentience, its wild nature hard to tame. However, it just so happens to be extremely strong, with little sister also being unable to control it completely at times, nearly injuring Senior Brother Ye's Black Water mysterious dragon. Little sister apologizes to Senior Brother Yi here, hoping that Senior Brother Yi will be magnanimous and not take offense. Yi Zhongzhou took in a few deep breaths consecutively before he could forcibly control himself from rushing up to reward her with a heaven-surging tide. The other party had already taken advantage of him, still acting innocent. Using a soft knife to kill him caused him to feel exceptionally stifled. Having stifled Yi Zhongzhou with just a few words, Chunlin swiveled her head to look at Yan Zhaoge, smiling slightly. "Yan Zhaoge, I have long heard of Senior Brother Yan's great name." Yan Zhaoge's eyes narrowed slightly, the other party's smile seeming to contain some other meaning. Indeed, he heard Chunlin continue, "I've heard that Senior Brother Yan has recently obtained a rare beast, a rarely seen Pishio, having a transcendent spirituality. I wonder if little sister will have the fortune to witness it." The green evil ghost wolf lying by her feet let out a low howl, vaguely containing a bloodthirsty, combative feeling. To be continued. Chapter 174. Yan Zhaoge stared at Chunlin for a moment before asking, "Your meaning is that you want to challenge my Pishio on behalf of your green evil ghost wolf?" This little sister knows that her cultivation base is inferior to Senior Apprentice Brother Yan's, and only has some experience in rearing spirit beasts. Therefore, I would like to seek Senior Apprentice Brother Yan's guidance. Chunlin said slowly, "Rearing spirit beasts is, after all, not just about feeding them. Actual combat is also required." Yi Zhongzhou's expression changed. Yan Zhaoge waved his hands at him, indicating for him not to make any random movements. Looking at that green evil ghost wolf of Chunlin's, Yan Zhaoge shook his head, saying, "Your green evil ghost wolf has already battled with Senior Apprentice Brother Ye's Black Water mysterious dragon before. Fighting with my Pishio again, even if it wins, it would still be an unfair victory, ah." Yi Zhongzhou felt it strange, because when Yan Zhaoge said this, he clearly had a feeling of not having much confidence, as though he was looking for an excuse to avoid battle. Senior apprentice brother Yan is of noble character and unquestionable integrity. Chun Lin admires it, but there is no need to worry. Chun Lin smiled leisurely. Green Evil's condition is indeed not good now, but I still have an absolute cold that can compete with senior apprentice brother Yan's Pixiu. Following Chun Lin's whistle, everyone immediately felt a wave of cold air approaching them at lightning speed. A moment later, an even more majestic green evil ghost wolf with an even denser killing intent appeared before them. The expressions on the faces of Yi Zhongzhou and the others all changed, never having thought that Chun Lin would actually possess two powerful green evil ghost wolves. Especially this ghost wolf named Absolute Cold. Just its fleshly body alone was already comparable to Yi Zhongzhou's black water mysterious dragon, and its bloody killing intent surpassed it by who knew how many times. My loss was not unjust. Yi Zhongzhou sighed. If his black water mysterious dragon faced off against Chun Lin's Absolute Cold ghost wolf, the other party would have a 70 to 80% chance of defeating it in a head-on clash. So this is the main dish. The earlier battle with senior apprentice brother Yi was just a prelude. Looking at Chun Lin, Yan Zhaoge laughed coldly within his heart. You were aiming for my Pixiu from the start, right? Chun Lin smiled, asking, how about it? Can senior apprentice brother Yan also release that Pixiu? Yan Zhaoge looked a little worried, but concealed it very well, like senior apprentice brother Yi said before. While these spirit beasts have limited intelligence, they just happen to be extremely strong. If they fight to the death, I'm afraid we won't be able to stop them in time. In the battle just now, didn't junior sister Chun fail to control your azure demon ghost wolf in time? In a battle between beasts, deaths and injuries are unavoidable. Chun Lin smiled. However, if senior apprentice brother Yan is truly lacking in confidence, why don't you go ahead? I won't force you. The Heavenly Thunder Hall, disciples by the side, all revealed smiles on their faces. Looking at Chun Lin and the others, Yan Zhaoge suddenly laughed soundlessly. Although he loved to fight back, such a simple method of provocation was useless against him. Yan Zhaoge knew why Chun Lin and the others had been so confident, as though they had already gotten rid of him. They should have found out from some way. Yan Zhaoge's Pixiu was still in its infancy, also lacking in combat experience. Even if it possessed shocking potential, it would still require sufficient time to be nurtured. Spirit beasts like the Pixiu, like wild beasts, did not have a long infancy. However, under normal circumstances, they would also require a certain amount of time to mature. If Yan Zhaoge refused to battle in order to protect his Pixiu, he could, of course. However, the alliance of Broad Creed Mountain, Jade Sea City, and Infinite Boundless Mountain, facing the Sacred Sun Clan and the Heavenly Thunder Hall. Their previous battle results hadn't been too good. Jade Sea City's Song Chao had been defeated by the Sacred Sun Clan's Tang Yonghao, while the battle between Su Fei and Tang Yonghao had ended in a draw. Infinite Boundless Mountains, Zhao Hao and Xiao Yu, facing disciples of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, had one victory and one defeat, but none of them had been able to fight Xia Zi. Now that Yi Zhongzhou's black water mysterious dragon had lost yet another battle, if Yan Zhaoge continued to be a coward, it would really be too demoralizing. The round-faced girl Zhang Yao's face was a little pale as she secretly said to Yan Zhaoge, senior apprentice brother Yan, I'm sorry. I didn't think that. Yan Zhaoge shook his head. It's fine. Having obtained the Pixiu, he hadn't had any intention of keeping it a secret in the first place. Zhang Yao couldn't be blamed. Moreover, because of the decimating Abyss Organization's spy, Turbid Wave Pavilion owed the Heavenly Thunder Hall a huge favor. When the younger disciples of Turbid Wave Pavilion interacted with each other, as long as it wasn't something too out of line, most of them would give them some face. If Chun Lin pretended to casually ask Zhang Yao about it, Zhang Yao wouldn't be able to say that she didn't know. Seeing that they seemed to have been forced into a corner by Chun Lin and the others, Yan Zhaoga sighed, saying to Hu, "Go bring Pan Pan over," choosing one of the two names. Fat Tiger was resolutely rejected by Hu. Therefore, in the end, that giant panda's name was still decided on as Pan Pan. When Pan Pan was brought onto Hovering Island, the smiles of Chun Lin and the others who had still been complacent just a moment ago instantly froze on their faces. Chun Lin was tongue-tied, as though she had swallowed a dead rat. Yi Zhongzhou and the others beside Yan Zhaoga were also dazed like wooden chickens as they looked dazedly at Pan Pan, whose body resembled that of an adult elephant that had appeared before them. The current Pan Pan, even lying down, was even taller than Chun Lin's first green evil ghost wolf standing up. Under normal circumstances, Pan Pan naturally wouldn't be able to grow so quickly. However, he wouldn't be able to withstand the large amounts of scarlet flame iron and cold light iron that Yan Zhaoga had specially refined to eat. Under sufficient nourishment, his growth rate would naturally far surpass the imaginations of others. Therefore, let alone Chun Lin and the others who were all rendered wide-eyed and tongue-tied. Even Xie Yuchan and Zhang Yao, who had seen Pan Pan before, also had expressions of disbelief on their faces. Yan Zhaoga said mildly, "In a battle between spirit beasts, death and injury are unavoidable. However, I believe that junior sister Chen definitely won't be afraid. After all, you still have one that you haven't fought before." Of course, if junior sister Chen really doesn't have confidence, I also won't force it. Having her words returned to her by Yan Zhaoga, Chun Lin's expression instantly turned cold as ice. Her face turning green, she let out a long breath, saying coldly, "How much ability I have we can only know after we fight. Many things are just superficial." "I agree with this." Yan Zhaoga nodded casually, looking at the extreme cold ghost wolf opposite him. Pan Pan still seemed a little unable to react, as he still had that charmingly naive look on his face. Seeing this, Chun Lin and the others regained their confidence. The extreme cold ghost wolf was extremely ferocious. Even feeling Pan Pan's immense strength, it did not show any fear as it stared fixedly at Pan Pan with its blood-red eyes. Pan Pan, on the other hand, had a cute look on his face, as though he was completely unaware of the current situation. The extreme cold ghost wolf was also not in a hurry as it stared patiently at Pan Pan. After a whole incense stick's worth of time had passed, the two demonic beasts were actually still in a stalemate. Because of Pan Pan's indifference, the scene looked a little strange and comical. However, the atmosphere amongst the surrounding spectators was already tense to the extreme, the very air itself seeming to have solidified. Chun Lin had originally looked as though she had a card up her sleeve. As time passed, the cold chi emanating from the extreme cold ghost wolf's body would grow denser, also being able to reduce its opponent's combat power more and more. However, as time passed, not only did she not feel the surrounding temperature drop, she instead felt it grow hotter and hotter. Chun Lin's gaze fell on Pan Pan's neck, where a short saber that flickered with a dim light hung. After carefully sensing it, Chun Lin's expression involuntarily changed. Mid-grade spirit artifact. You actually hung a mid-grade spirit artifact on this Pichio's neck? Yan Zhaoga, you're definitely cheating. Not even looking at her, Yan Zhaoga gazed at the sky as he said slowly, I'd be happy to hang a mid-grade spirit artifact on my pet as a toy. If you're not satisfied, you can also hang it on that little dog of yours. Chun Lin nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. Mid-grade spirit artifact. That was something that even she didn't have herself. How could she hang it on the ghost wolf? To be continued. Chapter 175. Martial scholars were unable to wield mid-grade spirit artifacts, Pan naturally even more so. However, as a mid-grade spirit artifact, the hidden clear sunlight saber possessed its own spirituality. The cold quality of the saber naturally absorbed all the surrounding cold chi. A mid-grade spirit artifact had been casually hung on the body of a spirit beast by Yen Zhaoge just like that. How could Chunlin not feel envious and jealous to the point of almost vomiting blood? Looking at Chunlin, whose face was filled with grief and indignation, Yen Zhaoge smiled, leisurely, just joking. Actually, it was me who forgot to remove the saber. Who came forward, removing the hidden clear sunlight saber from Pan's neck before retreating to Yen Zhaoge's side. With this interruption, the stiff atmosphere eased. The spectators all didn't know whether to laugh or to cry, but they also gained a deeper understanding of Yen Zhaoge's wealth. Pan still had a blank expression on his face, completely not caring about the ghost wolf before him as he looked at the hidden clear sunlight saber that had been taken away reluctantly. Chunlin felt a little stifled as she instructed the ghost wolf to continue. Despite having suffered some setbacks, the ghost wolf was still extremely patient, displaying a rare forbearance and composure. Streams of cold chi emanated, forming an icy fog. A world of ice and snow appeared amidst the icy fog, enveloping Pan. Pan just sat quietly where he was, still with a dazed look on his face. Chunlin watched the battle rather expectantly, but very quickly she discovered that without the hidden clear sunlight saber, the icy fog created by the ghost wolf was still growing thinner and thinner. Not only did the surrounding temperature not drop, it instead began rising once more. What is it this time? Chunlin was about to go crazy. Looking over, Pan didn't have any other treasures on him this time. However, from the surface of this giant panda's body, many white flames were born. The blazing heat of the flames unceasingly dispelled the icy fog, instead causing abundant fire-type spiritual chi to gradually disperse, gradually weakening the power of the ghost wolf. Chunlin's heart trembled. Pishio, possessing extraordinary talent, able to control white fire and black water. She said decisively, "Extreme frost, do it. We can't delay any longer." Every dog has its day. Now it was Chunlin and the absolute cold ghost wolf's turn to not dare to delay any longer. The longer they delayed, the more disadvantageous it would be for them. The ghost wolf of absolute chill took the initiative to attack. His speed was indeed extremely fast, virtually no slower than a Sciention martial practitioner of the Heavenly Thunder Hall. Still, while Pan appeared to be slow, his massive body stood there, not revealing the slightest flaw. Wolves were cautious by nature, and the extreme cold ghost wolf did not dare to easily approach. The ghost wolf of absolute cold had moved a very large distance, and Pan only needed to turn around. If they focused solely on defense with Pan's deterrence, the absolute cold ghost wolf would not dare to advance recklessly. Pan dared to take one or two hits from it, but it was unable to withstand Pan's heavy and powerful attacks. But this way, the consumption of the absolute cold ghost wolf's physical strength was very great. He was already at a disadvantage in terms of physical strength. In this way, the gap between him and Pan would only grow wider and wider. Although the absolute cold ghost wolf held the initiative on the battlefield, continuously circling around Pan, it was unable to find a suitable opportunity to attack. Chunlin bit her lips. "I can't hold back anymore. Since I've made my move, I have to win." Accompanied by her sharp whistle, the absolute cold ghost wolf's movements abruptly halted, raising its head and letting out a long howl towards the heavens, a small-scale snowstorm directly appearing around its body. Amidst the mournful howl, the absolute cold ghost wolf's body was pushed along by the snowstorm. Its speed abruptly increased by another level, shooting viciously towards Pan Pan. The eyes of the spectators all narrowed slightly, as they could all tell that this absolute cold ghost wolf had unleashed a kind of innate divine ability, borrowing the power of the snowstorm to instantly raise its speed and explosive power, its current attack. It was somewhat similar to Jade Sea City's supreme martial art, Heaven Flooding Tide, its entire body's power erupting fast and vicious. Yen Zhaoga chortled, clashing head-on. You'll die even faster. Pan Pan, who had always been charmingly naive, blinked, his massive body finally moving, facing the absolute cold ghost wolf's full-powered blow, not evading at all. Its massive body abruptly stood up before raising a hind leg resembling a human stomping its foot, mightily stomping downwards. Blazing white flames ignited on the surface of Pan Pan's body, enveloping its entire body. In that instant, it seemed as though it had transformed into a divinity that controlled flames. The blazing hot chi of Yang instantly swept away the snowstorm completely. The absolute cold ghost wolf wanted to evade, but it was already too late now, the light above its head abruptly dimming. As though Mount Tai was pressing down on it, the sky disappeared. The space around its body completely locked down as it was completely unable to move at all. Boom! Everyone's ears were filled with a roaring sound, the ground beneath their feet shaking, as though an earthquake was occurring. Amidst a tragic howl, the absolute cold ghost wolf was directly trampled beneath Pan Pan's foot. Amidst Chun Lin's innards that felt like they were about to burst apart, she saw Pan Pan look at the ghost wolf beneath his feet with a dazed expression on his face, before his fat body turned slightly. Next, his body, that resembled a small mountain, sat down. Seeing this, Chun Lin was instantly scared out of her wits as she involuntarily cried out, "Z, save absolute cold." Not needing her to say anything, a figure as fast as lightning had already shot viciously towards Pan Pan. It was precisely the number 1 expert of the Heavenly Thunder Hall in this time's Heavenly Connection meet, Xie Zi. However, not waiting for him to approach, Yen Zhaoga had already blocked his way. As the two clashed, a massive boom resounded. The surrounding spectators could only feel that the clash between these two was even more shocking than the earlier clash between the Pishio and the absolute cold ghost wolf. However, having been blocked like this, Pan Pan no longer had anyone to disturb him, as though there was no one else present, swaying as he sat down. This time, the absolute cold ghost wolf couldn't even let out a tragic cry as it directly breathed its last as Pan Pan sat down on it, transforming it into a wolfskin cushion. Chun Lin barely managed to not collapse headfirst onto the ground, fainting. While her cultivation base wasn't low, she didn't dabble much in the martial Tao or in actual combat. More than half of her abilities came from the 2 ghost wolves that she had meticulously raised. That ghost wolf called Green Evil aside, this absolute cold ghost wolf was precisely where her foundation lay. Now that it had actually been sat to death by Pan Pan right before her eyes, Chun Lin's eyes instantly turned red as she glared at Yen Zhaoga. "You actually struck such a vicious blow." Yen Zhaoga said indifferently, "Before the competition, what did Junior Apprentice Sister Chen say? If I remember correctly, it should be, in battles between spirit beasts, death and injury are unavoidable. That's what she said, right? Just now, if not for me making a move in time, Senior Apprentice Brother Ye's Blackwater, Mysterious Dragon, would have been killed by your ghost wolf. What did you say afterwards?" Yen Zhaoga spread his hands apart. "Let me think, it seemed like the green evil has still yet to gain sentience. Its wild nature hard to tame, yet its strength extremely great. Sometimes, even I am unable to completely control it, injuring Senior Apprentice Brother Ye's Blackwater, Mysterious Dragon. This little sister apologizes to Senior Apprentice Brother Yi here, hoping that Senior Apprentice Brother Yi will be magnanimous and not take offense. It should be like this, right? Yan Zhaoge swiveled his head to look at Yi Zhongzhou, who nodded with a cold smile on his face. Swiveling his head to look at Chunlin, Yan Zhaoge suddenly laughed. Do you think that I am returning your words back to you? It's not like that. Chunlin was taken aback, only to see Yan Zhaoge's smile turn domineering and arrogant. Everyone can totally be a little more candid with each other. Yan Zhaoge laughed lightly. For example, my Pan just happens to be lacking a wolfskin cushion. If your little dog doesn't deliver itself to us, we won't touch it. Since you have delivered yourself to us, we'll just slaughter it and accept it with a smile. Chapter 176. Looking at Yan Zhaoge, Chunlin was angered to the point that her Orochi almost went awry, directly entering cultivation deviation. A hand suddenly landed on her shoulder. Looking over, Chunlin saw that it was Xie Zi. Chunlin couldn't help but feel sorrowful. Xie Zi patted her shoulder, swiveling his head to look at Yan Zhaoge. Yan Zhaoge, right? He pointed at Pan. I can also tell you very candidly right now that I want to slaughter your Pishio. Xie Zi was around 30 years of age, his figure majestic, his features carrying a bit of ruthlessness. His gaze was filled with the same desire for battle and self-confidence as his fellow apprentice brother Yan Shan, just that his bearing was a little more stable than Yan Shan's. However, his entire body was still filled with an air of arrogance, appearing even more forceful and domineering. Yan Zhaoge shrugged. Actually, you also want to kill me, right? Looking at Yan Zhaoge, Xie Zi suddenly laughed, a cold light exploding within his eyes. Well said, well said. Yan Zhaoge, I know that you defeated that trash Lu Shengfeng, but if you think that I'm the same as him, then you're wrong. That's right. While Lu Shengfeng is very useless, being able to defeat him at the late Xiantian stage with your early Xiantian cultivation, it's enough to prove how outstanding you are. Xie Zi extended his palm, his fingers forming a blade as he chopped through the air. You're very outstanding, so it's inevitable that you're a little arrogant. However, remember this old adage. Only living geniuses are called geniuses, dead ones are nothing. This adage is applicable to everyone. It's best if you and I work together. Looking at Xie Zi, Yan Zhaoge shook his head and laughed. He slowly placed his finger before his neck, making a throat-cutting gesture towards Xie Zi. If you want to fight, there's no need for words. Flicking his wrist, Xie Zi walked towards Yan Zhaoge, saying coldly, That's exactly what I wanted. I'd like to see how many more of my punches you can take. Yan Zhaoge said mildly, Not even a single punch. Xie Zi was taken aback. I'll just directly knock you down with a few punches. Who said anything about receiving your punches? Yan Zhaoge laughed. Xie Zi's face darkened. Sharp-tongued brat. I hope your ability is not limited to that mouth of yours. As he spoke, Xie Zi strode forward, directly arriving in front of Yan Zhaoge, and struck out with a green thunder, right-heart fist. Dense lightning bolts covered Xie Zi's body. It was as if he was the god of thunder. The terrifying stellar energy was concentrated at one point, and the illusory world filled with lightning was compressed to the size of a fist, like a ball of lightning. Xie Zi's fist pressed towards Yan Zhaoge. Although it had shrunk a lot, its power was more condensed, far surpassing the illusory heaven and earth formed by ordinary Xiantian martial scholars. Yan Zhaoge's expression was as per usual as he similarly pushed forward with his palm, Orochi that resembled numerous fire dragons, surging, instantly intermingling as it transformed into a world of blazing fire. In the world of fire, a purplish-red pill furnace sat in the center, stabilizing the universe. As soon as this scene appeared, everyone was dumbfounded. They were Xue Fei and Tang Yonghao, who were meditating at the side. They also had stunned looks on their faces. Ever since his battle with Tang Yonghao, the Seven Seas young Master Song Chao, who had been standing quietly by the side as if the entire heavenly connection meet no longer concerned him, was similarly stunned. Ever since he had appeared, the world-illuminating young Master Huang Jia, who should have been the focal point of everyone's attention, but had kept a low profile as if he didn't exist, gazed at Yan Zhaoge, a radiance abruptly flashing through his eyes. Zhang Yao blurted out, "Aura Qi, illusory heaven and earth. The mid-Xiantian martial scholar realm." She swiveled her head to look at Xie Yuchan and Wan Ping, but wasn't it said that senior apprentice brother Yen had just stepped into the Xiantian stage not long ago? Wan Ping could no longer be bothered with his composure. Now, his mouth slightly agape, he looked somewhat absent-mindedly at Yan Zhaoge. At this moment, even if Xie Yuchan hadn't said it, he himself was also somewhat regretting his previous actions of probing Yan Zhaoge. Luckily, he had been stopped by Xie Yuchan in time. Everyone else was stunned on the spot. Xie Zi was even more dumbfounded. Previously, when you defeated Lu Shengfeng, wasn't you still in the early Xiantian martial scholar realm? Yan Zhaoge hadn't first concealed his cultivation base, and then caught his opponent off guard, instead immediately displaying his own strength. He laughed lightly. The scene that I have always wanted to see has now come true. Yan Zhaoge pushed out with his palm. Within the illusory heaven and earth, the purplish-red pill furnace suddenly shook mightily, as though something wanted to rush out from within. The next moment, the lid of the furnace opened, blazing fire spurting outwards. Then, a massive ape leapt out from within, towering between the heavens and the earth, moving mountains and shifting seas. That ape howled madly, punching out with a fist, sweeping up boundless blazing fire that danced madly along with it. The terrifying explosive force directly shattered the illusory heaven and earth formed of Xie Zi's aura qi into smithereens. Tushita Palm, Wind Fire Calamities, Mighty Ape Demonic Fist. The three combined, the explosive force directly wanting to overturn the heavens and overturn the earth. Xie Zi's expression changed abruptly. No wonder he could defeat the late Xiantian Lu Shengfeng as an early Xiantian martial scholar. He is indeed impressive. Not daring to be the slightest bit slow, he executed the thunder shadow body of the heavenly Thunder Hall's direct lineage, his figure moving backwards like a bolt of lightning, seemingly transforming into an illusory shadow. However, Yan Zhaoge's speed was not slower than his in the slightest. The aura, wind, heaven warping heavens in conjunction with the wind fire calamities as he chased after Xie Zi's retreating figure, not giving him any chance to catch his breath at all. Xie Zi's expression was dark and cold as a light flickered within his hand, a sword light shooting swiftly towards Yan Zhaoge. As he stabbed out, the combination of technique, eyesight, and speed had all reached the pinnacle of speed. Heavenly Thunder Hall's direct lineage, one of the Thunderbolt 3 supreme techniques, Thunderbolt Flash. The sword light within Xie Zi's hand flickered continuously, dozens of sword lights flickering, seemingly forming a single line. Thunderbolt consecutive flashes. Yan Zhaoge did not even blink as the Jade Dragon sword left its scabbard with a long roar, transforming into a jade light as it clashed with Xie Zi's low-grade spirit artifact, the Mist Sealing Sword. The Big Dipper sword expanded, starlight scattering, transforming into the all-encompassing starry sky as dozens of lightning bolts entered within, instantly disappearing without a trace. Xie Zi's expression grew even more solemn as he struck out with his sword once more. This time, his sword light transformed into a purple waterfall, condensed to the point of seeming tangible, with a majestic momentum resembling a long rainbow streaking through the heavens. One of the Thunderbolt 3 supreme techniques. Thunderbolt Shock, different from the Thunderbolt Flash, which pursued speed and technique. This sword instantly erupted all the true chi of the entire body, causing the power of the technique to increase greatly. However, this was still not the end. as a red light abruptly flashed past Xie Zi's face. Just as his first sword had been unleashed, his second sword had already followed closely behind, virtually using his sword as a large saber, chopping towards Yan Zhaoge with the posture of forcefully splitting Mount Hua. The power of this second sword was not inferior to that of the first in the slightest. The two terrifying sword lights, one horizontal and one vertical, forming a massive cross. The final move of the Thunderbolt 3 supreme techniques, Thunderbolt consecutive. The first sword had already been the full-powered strike of a late Xiantian martial practitioner like Xie Zi. However, after unleashing such a powerful technique, he completely did not need to recover his chi at all to immediately unleash a second sword, its power no weaker than that of the previous one. He had not held back his strength with the first sword, already unleashing his strongest offensive power. Under such circumstances, he was still able to immediately unleash a second sword. An opponent of the same level would already have to expend all of his strength to receive the first sword. The second sword that followed would be even harder to deal with. It was precisely the Heavenly Thunder Hall's direct lineage-killing technique. To be continued. Chapter 177. A set of the Supreme Thunderbolt 3 Ultimate Thunderbolt displayed the unique characteristics of the Heavenly Thunder Hall's legacy martial arts to the point of perfection. The first two Thunderbolt Flash and Thunderbolt Quake aside, the final Thunderbolt combo deeply contained the essence of the Heavenly Thunder Hall's legacy. While it was extremely powerful, it was also extremely profound and difficult to cultivate. Even many martial grandmasters were unable to successfully train in this move. Throughout the entire history of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, those who were able to successfully train in this Thunderbolt combo at the martial scholar realm could be counted on one's fingers. It was not without reason that Xie Zi was praised by many as the strongest grandmaster below the Heavenly Arrival sect. Xie Yuchan shook her head slightly when she saw this move. In her previous battle with Xie Zi did not unleash his Thunderbolt chain, and she was already defeated. If it were Lu Shengfeng, the result would be the same. He would most likely be defeated before he could force Xie Zi to use his trump card. Even Xue Fei, Tang Yonghao, and Song Chao paid more attention to the Thunderbolt chain, being one step behind Xue Fei, and the others had always been a sore point for Xie Zi. In Xie Zi's eyes, he was definitely not weaker than Xue Fei and Tang Yonghao. This move was left behind by Xie Zi in an attempt to challenge their trump card. It was just that at this moment, facing Yan Zhaoge, in just a few short exchanges, Xie Zi had already realized that this was an enemy that he might not be able to defeat even if he exerted all of his strength. Xie Zi didn't dare to hold anything back in the slightest as he consecutively hacked out, with his full strength twice in a somewhat illogical fashion, his target being Yan Zhaoge, the low-grade spirit artifact. The Mistlock sword merged with Xie Zi's sword intent, turning into two purple bolts of lightning that intersected to form a cross, cutting through the heavens and earth. Seeing this, Yan Zhaoge smiled slightly. The jade dragon sword in his hand shook, resembling the roar of a dragon. The green light danced and met Xie Zi's Thunderbolt chain. A streak of green light streaked across the sky and collided with the purple lightning cross. Without any pause, the second beam of green light soared into the sky. Following closely behind, the first streak of azure light also landed on the purple cross-shaped lightning. Xie Zi's pupils abruptly dilated. How is it possible that he also knows my Heavenly Thunder Hall's Thunderbolt combo? Chunlin and the other Heavenly Thunder Hall disciples were in an uproar. The martial grandmaster expert leading the Heavenly Thunder Hall abruptly glared at Fang Zhuan, his gaze like lightning. The others were similarly astonished. However, not waiting for them to regain their wits, Yan Zhaoge's third consecutive sword had already struck out. Xie was dumbfounded. Impossible. The Heavenly Thunder Hall's Thunderbolt combo could only unleash 2 consecutive strikes. Such an all-out attack, with 3 moves in a row, would first collapse the martial artist's own meridians. However, no matter how hard it was for Xie to accept, Yan Zhaoge's third sword let out a roar of destruction, easily shattering his already dissipating aura chi before Xie's shocked and inconsolable gaze. The unstoppable cross-shaped sword light was destroyed. In the next moment, a huge fist rapidly grew bigger in Xie's field of vision, until it filled his entire line of sight. Blood splattered in the air. Yan Zhaoge punched out heavily. He directly hit the bridge of his opponent's nose, causing his nose to bleed. Xie's whole body flew backward, and a stream of light flashed across his body. A jade pendant on his neck shattered. If not for this treasure protecting him in time, his head would have been directly blown apart by Yan Zhaoge. Even so, he fell headfirst onto the ground, unable to get up for a long time. Everyone stared dazedly at the incomparably miserable Xie, truly finding it hard to imagine that this was still that high-spirited heaven's favored son not long ago. However, their attention was no longer on Xie's body, instead turning to look at Yan Zhaoge. On every single one of their faces, they were all looking at Yan Zhaoge with expressions of disbelief. A Sacred Sun Clan disciple asked Tang Yonghao quizzically, "Senior apprentice brother Tang, just now, that was Thunderbolt triple combo?" Frowning, Tang Yonghao shook his head. It only looks similar to the Heavenly Thunder Hall's Thunderbolt triple combo. Actually, it's not the same, but the profundities within are something that I can't immediately see through. Yan Zhaoge retracted his fist, chanting slowly, "An instant splendor, finger-flicking shocking thunder." Keeping the jade dragon sword, he looked calmly at Xie. "I said before, I don't need to receive your fist. You can receive mine." At this moment, Xie was still a little dazed. The crowd of Heavenly Thunder Hall disciples were all a little dazed, and even the martial grandmaster expert who had led the Heavenly Thunder Hall team here was frowning, falling into deep thought. Everyone present had looks of amazement on their faces. Regaining her wits, Chun-Lin glared at Yan Zhaoge. "Where did you steal my Heavenly Thunder Hall's Thunderbolt combo from?" Yan Zhaoge glanced at her rather pitifully. "It's fine if you don't understand, but since you're ignorant, you should speak less. If you don't understand, and still want to pretend to understand, you'll only be making a fool of yourself. Go back and ask your seniors whether this is Thunderbolt combo or not. As for secretly learning martial techniques, I've always been rather curious as to how your clan's Lin Zhou learnt a line edge." Chun-Lin clenched her teeth, wanting to stand firm to the end, first insisting that Yan Zhaoge had stolen it. However, her seniors had not said anything at this moment, causing Chun-Lin to have no confidence. Her seniors not saying anything meant that in the eyes of Fang Zhuan, Shan Sherwing, and the others, the martial art that Yan Zhaoge had executed was really not Thunderbolt combo. However, such a result caused Chun-Lin and the other Heavenly Thunder Hall disciples to be even more unable to accept it, who secretly sent a sound transmission to Yan Zhaoge. "Young master, that 3-sword combo of yours just now, what exactly was it?" Towards him, Yan Zhaoge did not need to hide anything as he answered leisurely, "It was not a sword art like Thunderbolt combo. It is also a force-exerting technique. Sword arts, fist arts, and saber arts can all be used. The essence of Thunderbolt combo lies in being able to instantly recover after a full-powered strike, then immediately unleash a second attack. Also, the power of the second sword is not any weaker than the first in the slightest." Ahu nodded. Under such circumstances, even if a martial practitioner was facing an opponent whose cultivation base was slightly higher than his, he would still be able to achieve victory through this kind of consecutive killing move. If the opponent's cultivation base was the same as or lower than the user's, this Thunderbolt combo would very likely result in an instant kill. I have never learnt Thunderbolt combo before, and am not clear on the exact details of the technique used to exert force. However, I can understand the general principle behind it. The crux of continuously exerting force lies in the circulation of true qi, Yen Zhaoge explained. This is a technique that utilizes the strength of the entire body, the aura qi within the dantian, and the acupoints having to erupt simultaneously. After the user unleashes the first sword, the true qi should originally circulate within the body through the meridians, returning to the dantian. Then, when exerting force the next time, the true qi will once again be emitted from the dantian through the meridians. Using the Thunderbolt combo martial technique, after exerting force for the first time, one has to forcibly interrupt the normal flow of true qi within the body, preventing it from circulating back to the dantian. After the interruption, the true qi will immediately flow in reverse, thereby unleashing the second sword. Yen Zhaoge said, cultivating into a martial scholar, cultivating aura qi, is done by tempering one's inner qi in reverse. However, to reverse the flow of the entire body's aura qi is still not normal cultivation, but rather a life and death battle. This is a very heavy burden on the martial practitioner's body, let alone inner aura martial scholars and outer aura martial scholars, even Xiantian martial scholars, and even heavenly connection martial scholars are rarely able to do it. Therefore, there are very few martial scholars who can successfully cultivate in Thunderbolt combo. At this point, Yen Zhaoge shrugged. It might be a little impolite to say this, but this supreme martial art of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, which is renowned throughout the world, actually has a major flaw. Chapter 178. Hearing Yen Zhaoge's words. Ahu couldn't help but grin. Young master, if these words of yours were heard by those of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, they would probably completely explode. Not only had he defeated the elite of the Heavenly Thunder Hall's younger generation, Xie Zi, he had also directly stated that the Heavenly Thunder Hall's direct lineage martial art, Thunderbolt combo, had a major flaw. Not only would Chun Lin and the other younger generation disciples explode, even the martial grandmaster experts of the Heavenly Thunder Hall might personally come down to find trouble with Yen Zhaoge. Yen Zhaoge shrugged. Thunderbolt combo, this move, even if it is a martial grandmaster without having reached a certain level of cultivation, they also cannot use it too frequently. Otherwise, they might leave behind hidden injuries in their meridians. As for martial scholars like Xie Zi, it must be said that being able to cultivate in this move, he is already a heaven-defying genius, but it is also just a matter of a single move. Consecutively using it twice within a short period of time, without others needing to hit him, he would collapse first. Who asked curiously, then, young master, that move of yours just now? Yen Zhaoge said, that was a little thing that I created while analyzing the eye of the Thunder Emperor. Currently, it is actually still just an embryonic form, still awaiting further improvement. The concept of this concept originates from an instant of youth, finger-flicking shocking thunder. Yen Zhaoge raised his right hand. There are many details within. I'll slowly explain them to you when I have the time later. The general principle is that after the qi flow forms a circle, the aura qi after the first eruption does not return to the dantian, instead directly circulating quickly within the meridians of the arm. It is equivalent to creating a small dantian at the point where the force is exerted, temporarily using it. Yen Zhaoge explained, the place that I chose just now was the divine gate acupoint of the hand, using this acupoint as a temporary dantian. This dantian does not store aura qi, purely acting as a hub for the circulation of the aura qi. This way, the aura qi forms a circle, using a small circular method to exert force a second time. Not like the Heavenly Thunder Hall's Thunderbolt combo. It goes in a direct, reverse direction. Who understood as soon as he heard this? This way, the damage and pressure on the meridians would be greatly reduced. As long as the user's breath is strong enough, they would be able to easily unleash 3, 4, or even 5, or even more. Yan Zhaoga nodded. That's right, the more consecutive they are, the stronger their combat power will indeed be. However, in battle, qi returning speed is only one aspect. It's not the only deciding factor. There are many factors that affect the outcome of a battle, but when the difference between the other factors is not large, the speed of returning qi becomes very important. Ahu said, "Young master, you said that the method you used just now is only at the initial stage and is not perfect yet. If it's perfected, what would it be like?" Yan Zhaoga smiled slightly. "It's just the first step. There are thousands of martial arts theories in the world, each with their own strengths. However, the Great Tao is the simplest. Actually, different paths lead to the same destination. If it's a real battle, it can't be separated from being faster and stronger. Even though there are many variations and many principles, in the end, it all comes down to these 2 points. Strength can tear apart the void, and speed can travel through time. To some extent, it is also a representation of great strength and fast speed." Yan Zhaoga sighed. Continuing upwards, there is indeed some logic to it. It was no longer something that could be described by strength and speed. But if one continued upwards, the Great Tao would return to its roots. It would be another, higher existence. The Great Tao returns to one, returning to nothingness, yet also being omnipresent, the past and the future indifferent. Ahu was a little dazed. "Young master?" Yan Zhaoga smiled. "Don't understand? Actually, there are many things that I also don't understand, only remaining on paper. These things on paper, I also don't know if they're right or wrong. However, it is precisely these boundless profundities that attract us to unceasingly explore and learn martial arts. On one hand, we can compete with others, but on the other, we can actually also understand all that is unknown in this world." Scratching his big head, Ahu chuckled. "This logic I can understand." As Yan Zhaoga and Ahu conversed, the others also gradually regained their wits at this time. Their gazes as they looked at Yan Zhaoga were all incomparably blazing hot. Xie Zi was definitely not someone that ordinary late Xiantian martial scholars could compare to. It could even be said that even amongst the geniuses of the 6 great sacred grounds and their direct disciples, he was not someone that other late Xiantian martial scholars could compare to. Whether it was turbid wave pavilions, Xie Yuchan, or infinite boundless mountains, Lu Shengfeng, they were all not his match. Saying that he was the strongest martial scholar beneath heavenly connection was comparing him to figures like Xue Fei, Tang Yonghao, and Song Chao. Other than the 6 great sacred grounds, even heavenly connection martial scholars might not be able to defeat Xie Zi. However, such a heavens-favored son had now been defeated by a mid-Xiantian martial scholar. At this point, everyone felt conflicted once more. Yan Zhaoga, in just these short few days, he rose to the mid-Xiantian martial scholar realm, or was it that when he clashed with Lu Shengfeng earlier, he intentionally held back his strength, hiding his true cultivation base? But that's also not right, Wan Ping frowned. According to the rumors, he only just stepped into the early Xiantian stage, not long ago. Even then, he was still concealing it. Half a year ago, when he arrived at Cloud Portent Mountain, he was still in the late outer aura stage. It was still half a year's time, leaping from the late outer aura stage to the mid-Xiantian stage. Wan Ping felt a bit of a headache. It can't be that, at Cloud Portent Mountain, he was also concealing his cultivation base, right? Beside him, Zhang Yao's round face wrinkled. "Senior apprentice brother Yen, Exactly when was his cultivation base real? And when was it concealed? No matter how you look at it, it still feels so inconceivable. After glancing deeply at Yen Zhaoge, Xie Yuchan said, no matter how you look at it, there is one thing that can be confirmed. Currently in his early 20s, junior apprentice brother, Yen is already a mid-Xiantian martial scholar. Hearing her words, Wan Ping and Zhang Yao both nodded in unison. On Jade Sea City's side, looking at Song Chao and Yi Zhongzhou, Li Jingwan smiled bitterly, saying that we are of the same age. Looking at senior apprentice brother, Yen, Jingwan feels like an idiot. Yi Zhongzhou waved his hands. Don't say it like that, junior apprentice sister Li. If you say it like that, you might as well say that all my years have been spent living like a dog. He was currently also only in the mid-Xiantian stage. Looking quietly at Yen Zhaoge, Song Chao did not speak for a long time, only saying after a while, in this world, there will always be an extremely small number of people who stand out from the masses. No need to undervalue yourself. We are all amongst that extremely small number, but Yen Zhaoge, he is an extremely small number amongst the extremely small number. On Infinite Boundless Mountain's side, looking at Yen Zhaoge, after a while Ji Hanru sighed, I am far inferior to him. After having been defeated back then, Ji Hanru had really worked hard to improve himself, feeling ashamed and courageous, wanting to study diligently before finding Yen Zhaoge to get back at him. He was indeed worthy of being a core direct disciple of Infinite Boundless Mountain, a genius indeed turning pressure into motivation, breaking through his bottleneck, stepping from the early Xiantian stage to the mid-Xiantian martial scholar realm. However, seeing Yen Zhaoge's rate of improvement today, as well as that powerful strength at the same cultivation level, Ji Hanru completely dispelled all thoughts of competing with Yen Zhaoge. However, unlike that time half a year ago, the current Ji Hanru didn't feel any sense of defeat or disappointment at all. It wasn't that he had lost his ambition, but that the gap between the two sides was just too great. After having reached a certain point, the one who had fallen behind instead no longer had any thoughts of jealousy or hatred. Beside him, Zhao Hao's eyes shone, his expression solemn as never before as he stared fixedly at Yen Zhaoge. To be continued. Chapter 179. Zhao Hao's gaze was bright, his expression solemn as it had never been before as he stared fixedly at Yen Zhaoge, not speaking for a long time. On the other side, there was another person who was similar to Zhao Hao, the Sacred Sun clan's Huang Jie. Huang Jie, who had been waiting quietly all along, after seeing Yen Zhaoge's Orochi forming illusory heavens and earth, displaying the cultivation base of a mid-Xiantian martial scholar, his eyes, which had always been calm and tranquil, now erupted with a shocking brilliance. This light flashed for a moment and quickly returned to normal. Seeing Yen Zhaoge execute finger-flicking shocking thunder and defeat Xie Zi's thunderbolt combo, Huang Jie's originally tranquil gaze grew deeper and deeper. Beside him, Tang Yonghao gazed at Yen Zhaoge for a long time before saying softly, I really hope to be able to exchange blows with him as soon as possible. Whether I win or lose, I believe that I would still benefit greatly from it. Hearing this, Huang Jie remained silent. The others gradually came back to their senses. Everyone's gaze landed on Xue Fei, Tang Yonghao, and Song Chao. With Xie Zi's defeat, in the minds of everyone present, only these three heavenly connection martial scholars had the qualifications to continue battling with Yen Zhaoge. Sadly, Su Fei and Yen Zhaoge were of the same lineage, also being on very good terms. Even if they were to clash, they could very well do so behind closed doors. Tang Yonghao made it clear that no matter who won or lost, he would not use his realm to suppress his opponent. Thus, everyone's gaze fell on the Seven Seas Prince, Song Chao, the son of Jade Sea City's Lord Song Wuliang, a leading figure of Jade Sea City's younger generation. while he had been inferior to the radiant light sword Tang Yonghao. By a single move, just from that single exchange, Song Chao definitely lived up to his reputation. Moreover, he was also one of the 4 young masters alongside Yan Zhaoge. While Jade Sea City and Broad Creed Mountain were allies, this did not affect the sparring between their disciples. It was just that the smell of gunpowder would not be as strong, not to the extent of life and death being decided. However, Song Chao clearly had no intention of clashing with Yan Zhaoge. No matter how the gazes of the crowd fell on him, he still maintained a gentle and elegant appearance, calm as always. Seeing Song Chao's performance, everyone knew it was destined that he would not be able to see Yan Zhaoge's battle with Song Chao. From the start of the Heavenly Connection meeting until now, even though Tang Yonghao and Song Chao, as well as Tang Yonghao and Xue Fei, the 3 Heavenly Connection stage experts, were fighting each other fiercely and brilliantly, but there was no doubt that the most dazzling star was. It was Broad Creed young master Yan Zhaoge. With his early Xiantian cultivation, he had beaten Lu Shengfeng, who was at the late Xiantian stage, to the point that he was too ashamed to participate in the alliance meeting. He had just advanced to the early stage of the Xiantian realm not long ago, and in such a short time, he had once again broken through to the middle stage of the Xiantian realm. Then, with his Xiantian middle stage cultivation, he easily defeated Xie Zi, who was praised as invincible under the heavens. Also, in every match, whether intentionally or unintentionally, Yan Zhaoge would always clash head-on, defeating his opponents in the domain they were most proficient in. This made his victory even more indisputable. In this time's Heavenly Connection meet, Yan Zhaoge resembled the blazing sun in the sky, illuminating the entire world as the myriad stars lost their light. Not only the juniors, but the authorities who were watching the battle also exchanged glances with one another and fell silent. After a long time, Shan Sherwing sighed softly. "It's true, it's another Yen Wudi." Everyone else was silent. Even that elder M.O., his face currently black, also did not open his mouth to speak. Shan Sherwing sighed softly once more. Also, from this old man's observation, he actually seems to have the momentum of surpassing his master. He swiveled his head to look at Fang Zhuan. Congratulations to Broad Creed Mountain for producing yet another true dragon. Fang Zhuan nodded slightly. Shan Sherwing is polite. Elder M.O. stared at Yan Zhaoge, his gaze distant. Similarly moving were the martial grandmaster experts of Turbid Wave Pavilion, who had been guarding this place, as well as the martial grandmaster experts of the Sacred Sun clan who had led their team here. Their gazes on Yan Zhaoge, they were all somewhat hard to understand, as though filled with deep meaning. Fang Zhuan, the martial grandmaster of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, as well as Jade Sea City's Elder Chen, as well as Shan Sherwing imperceptibly exchanged glances, their expressions as per usual on the surface. On Floating Traveling Island, there had first been the battle of the 3 great Heavenly Connection martial grandmasters, then Yan Zhaoge domineeringly defeating Xie Zi. At this point in the Heavenly Connection meet, while it had yet to end, the thoughts of the participants were gradually beginning to fade. All that they had experienced earlier already had to be slowly digested and absorbed. But just as everyone thought that this matter had come to an end, the situation suddenly changed. The dense fog that enveloped Clear Concealed Lake all year round suddenly resembled boiling water, surging unceasingly. The cloud layer exploded unceasingly, resembling one massive bubble after another bursting open unceasingly. Down below, a dim, black light suddenly appeared at the bottom of Clear Concealed Lake that was clear as jade. A massive formation appeared, numerous spirit patterns flickering, innumerable sigils circulating. Illuminated by the black light, the water of the lake instantly turned pitch black, while the fog above the lake's surface also turned roiling dark clouds, black as ink. amidst the all-encompassing dark clouds. Streaks of red lightning swam about unceasingly, expanding in all directions. Occasionally, a terrifying crimson bolt of lightning would descend, illuminating the sky, yet unable to disperse that darkness, instead causing the scene before them to appear even more strange and mournful. At the bottom of the Black Lake, the massive formation circulated, the black spirit patterns flickering with a dim light, giving off a feeling of unbearable filth. In the northwest direction of clear, concealed lake, a stream of water that had originally been calm suddenly became berserk. That river water seemed to possess a life of its own, transforming into a strange dragon that wreaked havoc unceasingly, its entire body a crimson red like blood. This strange dragon stretched out its head and front half, entering clear, concealed lake to wreak havoc unceasingly, while the back half of its body extended far away into the distance. That source was in the Earth domain. There seemed to be an endless amount of energy gushing into the strange dragon's body, causing it to wreak havoc in clear, concealed lake. The strange dragon extended its claws, grabbing towards that massive black light formation at the bottom of the lake. The formation became like a huge door, which was grabbed by the strange dragon's claws, before slowly opening to both sides. Instantly, a terrifying aura rapidly enveloped the entire clear, concealed lake, unceasingly rising and spreading towards both sides. That aura did not give off a feeling of filth or evil, but caused one's mind to waver, making it hard for them to stabilize their minds. The strange power seemed to be incessantly stirring up the deepest desires and negative thoughts in the hearts of everyone on the lake, unceasingly magnifying them. These desires and negative thoughts seemed to have obtained nourishment, rapidly growing roots and sprouting, breaking out of the soil, rapidly growing into great trees that towered into the heavens. And, accompanied by the growth of these things, the formation at the bottom of the lake also seemed to have been nourished, circulating more freely, that terrifying aura also increasing by several times. Because of the news of the heavenly thunder hall, most of the core, direct disciples of the various clans participating in the Heavenly Connection Meet had actually already received a warning from their seniors. At this moment, facing a major change, those who had already been prepared for it were mostly able to stabilize their minds in time. As Yan Zhaoge carefully experienced the changes in his mental state, he gazed towards the surface of the lake in the distance, seeing numerous crimson bolts of lightning descending there. Within the lake, the massive figure of the strange blood-red dragon was indistinctly visible, bobbing and sinking. Feeling that terrifying aura that confused his mind, Yan Zhaoge knit his brows slightly, muttering to himself, "It really is a 9-underworld evil devil." P.S. Thanks to fellow readers Shut Up and Then Scram, and fellow readers Blue Dream Wind Chime for their 20,000 coins each. Thanks to fellow readers Cloud Dancing Setting Sun, Emojine, Grand Saber, Baya, Bad Feather, Walking in Me, Harmony and Love, LV 10 Devil Scholar, Endless Still, Purgatory Ling Shaozi, Strange O Shallow, Floating About, and Oyang Sanyu for their 10,000 coins each. And thanks to all the other friends who have gifted this book, subscribed to this book, voted for this book. Thank you all. Chapter 180. Full of sincerity, requesting for subscriptions, and monthly votes. Thank you, everyone. Enveloped by that terrifying aura, everyone present was more or less affected somewhat. For example, after being defeated by Yan Zhaoge, Xia Zi, whose heart was filled with countless emotions, surged unceasingly. As a disciple of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, he had been the first to understand the changes that were about to occur during this Heavenly Connection Meet. However, having been domineeringly defeated by Yan Zhaoge at this moment, his emotions were at their most intense, his state of mind the most unstable. Enveloped by that aura, Xia Zi's mind was filled with various thoughts, various strange scenes even appearing before his eyes, almost causing him to go mad. As a descendant of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, while he was arrogant, facing such a huge change, he still did not lose his cool. Sensing that his current state of mind was not right, he tried to control it. But even so, many thoughts surged within his heart, unable to be suppressed no matter how he tried. Especially when the source of many of these thoughts, Yan Zhaoge, was currently right before his eyes. Chun Lin, who was in a similar situation to him, was also feeling restless and uneasy. Looking at Pan Pan, the panda who had killed her extreme cold ghost wolf, she felt as though she had met her mortal enemy. Her eyes were exceptionally red, making her wish that she could disregard the fact that she was only a grandmaster of the physical invulnerability realm and kill Pan Pan as soon as possible. On the other hand, while Yan Zhaoge and Pan Pan had helped his black water mysterious dragon vent its anger, Yi Zhongzhou currently found Chun Lin to be an eyesore no matter how he looked at her. Everyone else more or less had the same problem. Even the heavenly connection martial scholar Song Chao's heart was a little unstable, wanting to battle Tang Yonghao once more. Like Yan Zhaoge and the others, they were all direct disciples of the various sacred grounds, possessing deep cultivation bases and firm wills. On Clear Concealed Island, even on Clear Concealed Lake, the other martial practitioners of Turbid Wave Pavilion, as hosts, their influence was even more obvious. Some malicious thoughts that were usually buried deep within their hearts, not even being detected by themselves, surfaced to the surface one after another. The hatred and resentment that had been accumulated over the past few days all seemed to be exposed at this moment. The contradictions had also become even more extreme. The middle-aged martial practitioner, who had previously attempted to capture Pan Pan and used his bout to interfere with Pan Pan's advancement, had been heavily injured by Lu Shengfeng, had still not fully recovered from his injuries, having been arranged by Turbid Wave Pavilion to recuperate on a small island on Clear Concealed Lake. At this moment, this middle-aged martial practitioner's eyes were crimson. He struggled to get up. His expression was ferocious and terrifying, but he was also in pain and hesitation. He had been heavily injured by Lu Shengfeng earlier. While Lu Shengfeng had been beaten half to death by Yan Zhaoge, he had been brought away by Shan Sherwing. This caused him to feel rather bitter hatred towards Infinite Boundless Mountain, but there was nothing he could do about it. The mountain domain's sacred ground, Infinite Boundless Mountain, whether it was the middle-aged martial practitioner himself or the power of the clan he belonged to, they were all powerless to shake it. That high and mighty strength made it impossible for him to even think of revenge. But the strength of the 6 holy lands, it still made him feel unreconciled. Afterwards, Turbid Wave Pavilion's lineage had properly treated and settled him down, allowing him to feel slightly better. However, at this moment, this middle-aged martial practitioner's heart was filled with hatred towards Infinite Boundless Mountain, even hating Turbid Wave Pavilion, which was also one of the 6 great sacred grounds. The negative emotions in his heart surged uncontrollably, becoming more and more intense. His rationality gradually faded, and he was unable to extricate himself from it. This middle-aged martial artist was just a tiny microcosm of what everyone on Clear Concealed Lake was currently facing. On the floating island, Yan Zhaoge was also in the midst of calming his many emotions. It was just that with his cultivation base and his lack of injuries that would cause him to be distracted, he wanted to stabilize his mental state. It could not be considered too difficult. The legacy of the Flame Devil Emperor affecting one's emotions is only in the direction of rage. However, the 9 underworld's evil devils come in all shapes and sizes, hard to guard against, especially proficient in digging out the desires and fears within the hearts of lords. Hard to guard against. Yan Zhaoge shook his head slightly, Ahu beside him baring his teeth. Young Master, Elder Fong, and the others should also be making their move by now, right? It's about time. Yan Zhaoge gazed into the distance, carefully sensing it. He could sense that there were quite a few martial practitioners approaching clear, concealed lake from all directions. These martial practitioners all had different legacies. There was no lack of martial grandmaster experts amongst them, even some peak experts, their auras surging to the heavens, not inferior to Elder Chun, Shan Sherwing, and the others. Without a doubt, these were all experts of the Decimating Abyss organization. Having gathered at Clear Concealed Lake this time, they wanted to accomplish a major matter for them. However, Turbid Wave Pavilion and the other 5 sacred grounds, having received the news beforehand, had already made preparations. Numerous experts of Turbid Wave Pavilion had long since been lying in ambush in the vicinity of Clear Concealed Lake. After the people of the Decimating Abyss organization had congregated at Clear Concealed Lake, they instantly set out in ambush Broad Creed Mountain and the other 5 sacred grounds in order to avoid exposing their plans. Similarly, respecting Turbid Wave Pavilion, none of their experts had entered the lake domain. However, the numerous experts headed to the Earth domain once more, cutting off the possibility of the 9 underworlds descending from another direction. Meanwhile, on Clear Concealed Island, Fang Juan and the others also finally made their move. Having long since been prepared, Fang Juan and the others acted according to the plan, the division of labor clear and orderly, congregating with the experts of Turbid Wave Pavilion, lying in ambush here. Fang Juan and the others went to deal with the strange blood-red dragon within the lake, some to capture the spies of the Decimating Abyss organization hidden within the various sacred grounds, and some to regain control of Clear Concealed Lake's formation, stopping the Decimating Abyss organization's plans. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. The darkness of the dark clouds that enveloped the sky above Clear Concealed Lake gradually began to dissipate, regaining its former ethereal appearance, the strange, violent red lightning no longer visible. The lake water that was jet black as ink also began to turn clear once more. On Clear Concealed Island, a green-clothed middle-aged man looked somewhat regretfully, somewhat sorrowfully at the person before him. Senior Apprentice Brother Feng, why did you join the 9 underworlds? Before him was a martial grandmaster with a rather aged appearance. It was precisely the elder of Turbid Wave Pavilion, who had previously been in charge of leading the disciples of Turbid Wave Pavilion to participate in the Heavenly Connection Meet, as well as in charge of Clear Concealed Lake's formation. Looking at that green-clothed middle-aged man, this elder Feng said hatefully, "Those who walk different paths cannot make plans together. There is no need for words." The green-clothed middle-aged man sighed. Was there a need for this? His cultivation base was higher than Elder Feng's, and control of Clear Concealed Lake's formation had already been seized by him at this moment. In this way, not to mention winning, even if Elder Feng wanted to escape, it would not be easy anymore. Now, the green-clothed, middle-aged man's expression suddenly changed slightly as he turned to look. "Why have you come? You should be going. You." His voice suddenly halted. "So you actually also, on Clear Concealed Island, looking at the calamity that was gradually calming down," Yen Zhaoga and the others all heaved a sigh of relief. However, not waiting for them to truly relax, the scene before their eyes suddenly changed. The massive formation that flickered with a black light lit up once more at the bottom of the lake, the sky turning dark once more as crimson red lightning intersected. That terrifying aura that shocked one's very soul appeared once more. Yen Zhaoga's pupils dilated slightly, a bright light flickering within. The next moment, the floating island beneath their feet suddenly began to tremble. The floating island formed by the restrictive array formation suddenly began to disintegrate. A massive suction force emanated from below, pulling Yen Zhaoga and the others downwards. To be continued. Chapter 181. The floating island was originally formed from the radiance formed from the power of Turbid Wave Pavilion's formation here, combining with the clouds and mist that filled the skies of clear, concealed lake. At this moment, dark clouds covered the sky, and under the terrifying aura, the floating island was also dyed black. Inside the black island, there was a faint flash of strange red light. As the red light pulsed, the floating island shook violently. The blood-red light turned into cracks that looked like sharp wounds. The floating island immediately shattered and began to disintegrate. At the same time that the floating island in midair began to disintegrate, clear, concealed island below also began to shake violently. The huge island gradually sank into the lake until it was completely submerged. As clear, concealed island sank, in the central region of clear, concealed lake, the waters of the lake formed a massive whirlpool. The center of the whirlpool was pitch black, as though it was a black hole. A terrifying suction force came from the black hole, wanting to drag everything in the surroundings in. Hovering Island was right above the black hole. Affected by that massive suction force, the fragments of Hovering Island that had collapsed fell downwards along with Yen Zhaoga and the others on the island. There's a change in the plan. Yen Zhaoga and the others exchanged glances, all reading the same thoughts from each other's gazes. Fortunately, when the black clouds covered the sky again, everyone had a premonition in their hearts. While clear, concealed island had directly sunk down below, even forming a black hole that was out of everyone's expectations, Yen Zhaoga and the others were still not caught unprepared. Yen Zhaoga tapped lightly on a fragment of hovering Sky Island. His entire person leapt up, landing on Pan Pan's back, with Ahu following closely by his side. Swiveling his head to look, Yen Zhaoga relaxed. He saw that Sikong Qing had already been grabbed by Xue Fei, stepping on the fragment of floating Sky Island as they quickly fled into the distance. As for the other sacred grounds, Infinite Boundless Mountain had Ji Hanru leading the way, while Turbid Wave Pavilion had Xie Yuchan and Wan Ping. Jade Sea City had Song Chao and Yi Zhongzhou. The Xiantian realm disciples of the various clans with higher cultivation bases would take care of their junior brothers and junior sisters with slightly lower cultivation bases. Everyone used the floating island fragments to escape as far as possible from the center of the black hole below. The floating island shattered, and everyone descended. Because of the black hole, the falling speed was even faster. If they wanted to dodge in time, they would have to struggle free from the suction force of the black hole. Physical invulnerability grandmasters and inner invulnerability grandmasters had the heart but lacked the strength. They needed the help of innate grandmasters. Among the disciples of the 6 holy lands, only the situation of the Heavenly Thunder Hall was comparatively worse. Xia Zi had already been injured in the first place, his mental state even more unstable. At this moment, even he himself was like a clay bodhisattva crossing the river, unable to protect himself, let alone Qinlin and the others. Fortunately, over at the Sacred Sun Clan's side, Tang Yonghao had noticed this problem in time, his cultivation also high, thus being able to bring Xia Zi, Qinlin, and the others along to break out of the encirclement. Everyone rushed out. Thanks to their quick reflexes, they did not fall straight into the black hole. But at the edge of the black hole, they could still feel the strong suction force. It was like a quicksand pit, trying to drag everyone around it into it. Under the effects of the massive formation that sparkled with black light, the previously beautiful and marvelous clear concealed lake had now completely changed its appearance. In the distance, the black lake water churned as if it was boiling. And in the region close to the black hole at the center of the lake water had disappeared, only leaving behind a patch of pitch black, resembling sludge that had clogged up clear concealed lake. Stepping on the sludge, Yen Zhaoga, Pan Pan, and who instantly felt as though the black sludge beneath their feet had a life of its own. It curled towards their feet. That terrifying aura that shook one's heart grew stronger and stronger at this moment. Yen Zhaoga, and the others released their Orochi, keeping the sludge at bay as they continued advancing towards the outskirts of clear, concealed lake. The further they were from the center of the formation, the smaller these negative effects were. Following closely behind Yen Zhaoga, Ahu said vexedly, "Didn't you say that everything was within your grasp? Why is young master risking your lives again?" Yen Zhaoga looked back towards the black hole that had appeared where clear, concealed island had vanished, while the Heavenly Thunder Hall provided us with some information, allowing us to identify the spies of the Decimating Abyss organization. However, this does not mean that all the spies of the Decimating Abyss organization are within our grasp. It is not that the Heavenly Thunder Hall did not report it, but that their knowledge is similarly limited. Everything that happened before, it is precisely because of the limited information that the plan was made as conservatively as possible in order to guard against unexpected situations. Yen Zhaoga's expression was a rarely seen seriousness. However, in the end, there was still an oversight. This means that the Decimating Abyss organization, or should I say the 9 underworlds, has infiltrated the 8 extremities world, our clan included, far surpassing everyone's imaginations. The martial grandmaster experts who have come here to ambush us were all chosen by the various sacred grounds to be the most trustworthy, the least suspicious. At this point, Yen Zhaoga sighed. However, from the looks of it now, some of these people have also met with problems. I can only hope that not too many of them have met with problems. Otherwise, we would really be sending lambs into a tiger's den this time. Ahu's face was bitter. Who could it be? Being able to rise to such a high position in the 6 great sacred grounds. Why would they get involved with the Decimating Abyss organization? Yen Zhaoga did not speak. His gaze focused as he revealed a pondering look. Let's see if the backup plan can work. However, if the backup plan is also leaked, being targeted by the enemy, today's matter is destined to be hard to resolve. In the distance, intense fluctuations of power emanated from various directions. Clearly, many experts were currently scattered in various locations, engaging in battle. Meanwhile, the terrifying aura that enveloped clear, concealed lake was growing denser and denser. The black light formation seemed to have opened a great door to the 9 underworlds of this human world, accompanied by the unceasing use of the formation. The black mud beneath Yen Zhaoga and the others' feet also began to grow more and more strange and violent. The martial practitioners within the lake resembled flickering candles in the wind, extinguishing one by one as they were engulfed by the mud. "Young master," whose expression was stern as Yen Zhaoga said to him, "don't worry about me. Just pay attention to your own safety, especially guarding your mind. Don't let the devilish chi take advantage of you." At this moment, the great 9 underworlds door is actually still far from truly opening. It is only a sliver of its aura leaking out from the crack in the door. As long as we remain within ourselves, we will be able to stabilize our minds. Saying thus, the 2 were engulfed by the mud. Yen Zhaoga's vision darkened, but he did not feel suffocated. That devilish chi that looked like mud, when truly situated within it, was like being within a dense fog. Pan followed closely by Yen Zhaoga's side, curiously surveying their surroundings. As Yen Zhaoga slowly led him forward, the scene before him suddenly changed as a purple light of thunder flickered. Within the light of thunder, a human figure appeared. It was shockingly Xie Zi. It was only that the current Xie Zi had completely recovered from his injuries, and his aura seemed to be even stronger than before. However, his entire person appeared strange and distorted. Seeing Yen Zhaoga, his eyes lit up, and a strange smile appeared on his face. The next moment, Xie Zi's figure suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, a terrifying and evil purple sword light had already arrived in front of Yen Zhaoga. "Fallen to the dark side." Yen Zhaoga frowned slightly. "Since you are seeking death, I shall grant your wish. Chapter 182. Xie Zi's face twisted slightly, and a strange yet demonic smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. His figure flashed and disappeared from where he stood. His speed seemed to be even faster than before. It was just that Xie Zi's current movement technique was not like before. It was of the direct lineage of the heavenly thunder hall, fast as lightning, yet strong and blazing, resembling the thunder of the nine heavens. The current Xie Zi's movement technique was even faster, but had an additional demonic feeling. Yan Zhaoge frowned slightly, raised his hand, and a jade light roared out from his sleeve, resembling a dragon from beyond the heavens. The jade light paused in midair, accurately blocking a terrifying and demonic purple sword light. Xie Zi's figure also reappeared, holding the vapor-sealing sword. His gaze was cold and gloomy, and his pupils were slightly yellow, vaguely projecting a strange red light. He looked at Yan Zhaoge, and the corners of his mouth curled into a strange and distorted smile. Yan Zhaoge slightly narrowed his eyes. Fallen to the dark side, Xie Zi laughed unconcernedly. Yan Zhaoge, let's fight again. His figure suddenly turned and disappeared once more, the purple sword light also fading. The next time he appeared, he was already behind Yan Zhaoge, stabbing out with his sword. Yan Zhaoge stood where he was, his feet not moving, his body not turning, and with a backhand slash accurately blocked Xie Zi's attack. Again. Xie Zi laughed loudly. Now is different from before. Yan Zhaoge, I will cut out all of your heart and liver. His figure was as fast as a ghost, appearing and disappearing, and a purple lightning was also strange and unpredictable in the darkness, constantly changing. Pan, don't worry. Just stay put. As Yan Zhaoge said this, his feet were firmly nailed to the ground, and the jade dragon sword in his hand flew up and down, continuously blocking Xie Zi's incoming sword light. After falling to the dark side, my strength has indeed increased, but not by much. Yan Zhaoge's expression was calm as he analyzed Xie Zi's sword patterns. Although my mental state is unstable, I can still maintain my calm in battle. I won't lose my level. After comparing the difference between Xie Zi's strength before and after falling to the dark side, Yan Zhaoge already had a rough idea of what had happened. Generally speaking, after falling to the dark side, there will be a slight increase in strength, but the extent of the increase varies. He looked at Xie Zi and suddenly smiled. What I said might be a bit of a blow to you. After you fell to the dark side, the extent of the increase in strength seems to belong to the relatively small, relatively poor category. Xie Zi, who was flickering in and out of existence, suddenly stopped moving. Within his yellowed pupils, the blood-red light grew even more piercing. Xie Zi stared fixedly at Yan Zhaoge, letting out a strange laugh. The violent purple sword light suddenly appeared and instantly traversed dozens of meters of space. It was as wide as a door, as if it could split heaven and earth. Chopping towards Yan Zhaoge, after the first slash, another slash followed. It was the Thunderbolt combo. I've said it before, Yan Zhaoge. Things are different now. Xie Zi let out a strange laugh as he slashed out a third time. Blue veins bulged all over his body, making him look extremely hideous and terrifying. His face revealed a pained expression. However, the black mist in the demonic domain around him clung to his body. Although it could not stop the meridians in his body from tearing apart, it could not stop them. However, it greatly alleviated his pain. Xie Zi laughed painfully and happily, pushed by the Thunderbolt combo. 3 majestic sword lights chopped straight towards Yan Zhaoge. Yan Zhaoge calmly looked at Xie Zi. The jade dragon sword in his hand danced, and the jade green sword light shot up to the sky. After the first slash, without any hesitation, He chopped out another slash. After the second slash, another slash followed. After the third slash, and then another slash, Xie Zi's eyes widened as he saw Yan Zhaoge continuously chopping out 5 slashes. The 6th slash continued, finger flicking shocking thunder, 6 consecutive loops. The purple sword light shattered and dissipated like a flowing fire. The black mist was also momentarily separated and cleansed. The terrifying jade green sword light seemed to transform into a dancing green dragon, tearing Xie Zi's body apart. The last scene that remained in Xie Zi's mind was Yan Zhaoge calmly looking at him and asking, "What's different from before?" Xie Zi opened his mouth, wanting to roar, but no sound came out. He was unresigned, he was angry, and he felt even more fear. He didn't hesitate to transform into a 9 underworld evil devil, but still couldn't defeat this opponent. Xie Zi's resentment was even more intense than when he had first fallen into the domain of devilish qi and transformed into a devil. But his life had already reached its end, and he had turned into ashes. His broken body fell to the ground, gradually turning into black smoke and merging into the surrounding domain of devilish qi. Yan Zhaoge looked at the strange transformation of Xie Zi's corpse and slightly raised his eyebrows. It's the same as recorded, although his bones, flesh, and meridians are no different from those of a normal person. He is no longer purely a human. Fallen practitioners were infected by devilish qi, and the desires or obsessions in one's heart were rapidly magnified without restraint. Finally, the inner illusion acted on the external reality, combining with the devilish qi, causing the person's body to begin to undergo irreversible changes, turning into a 9 underworld evil devil. In the first transformation, which was also when the person truly fell to the dark side, because of the change in life type, the person's strength would increase more or less. If the person was originally seriously injured, then this time they would recover to a large extent, or even be completely healed. Fallen practitioners in the domain of devilish qi would have their battle prowess increase to a different degree. What was worth noting was that whether they were bewitched by the outside world or forced by the critical situation, what pushed the fallen practitioner to take the final step was still their own will. Even if this will was formed because of various previous experiences at the last moment, the person who made the decision was always the fallen practitioner themselves. No one could force a person who had always had a resolute will to resist, and would not be swayed by any other thoughts, to fall to the dark side. Fundamentally speaking, falling to the dark side was always a person's desires and obsessions in one's heart magnified to the extreme, suppressing all other thoughts. Only then could one interact with the devilish qi and combine inside and outside. Before this, being infected by devilish qi did not mean that one would definitely fall to the dark side. Yan Zhaoge came to the place where Xie Zi's corpse had disappeared and put away his mist-sealing sword. Apart from this, there was something else worth paying attention to, a brocade bag. Opening the brocade bag, Yan Zhaoge could see a strangely shaped golden talisman. The golden talisman was engraved with graceful patterns. Yan Zhaoge carefully looked at it and felt that the patterns were vaguely familiar. However, he couldn't understand them at the moment, so he temporarily restrained himself and put the item away. The giant panda Pan Pan curiously came to Yan Zhaoge's side and called out in a low voice. Being in the domain of devilish qi, Pan Pan also felt very uncomfortable. Strange beasts could also fall to the dark side. Yan Zhaoge comforted Pan Pan as he walked in the domain of devilish qi. Suddenly, Yan Zhaoge vaguely felt a sense of danger in his heart. A feeling of extreme danger appeared in his mind. Almost at the same time, a dim sword light lit up in the domain of devilish qi. From behind Yan Zhaoge, it pierced straight towards the back of his head. Martial Grandmaster. To be continued. P.S. Thank you to the book friend Martial Alliance Mortal Dustfall for your 10,000 points reward. Thank you to the other friends who have voted for this book, and subscribed to this book. Thank you all. Chapter 183. The dark sword light zigzagged, as if it had completely merged with the dark demonic domain. The sword light itself seemed to possess a life of its own, resembling a venomous snake as it soundlessly pierced towards the back of Yan Zhaoga's head. Beside Yan Zhaoga, as a beast, Pan's ability to sense danger surpassed that of human martial practitioners. However, at this moment, he was completely unable to detect the incoming sword light at all. And of the many spirit artifacts that Yan Zhaoga had on him, not mentioning his spoils of war like the flying thunder saber and the purple gold thunder sword, even Yan Zhaoga's jade dragon sword, which had always been by his side and was connected to his mind, and which he was most comfortable with, as well as the mid-grade spirit artifact, the hidden clear sunlight saber, with their strong spirituality, had not detected this sword. It was a soundless yet incomparably terrifying sword. To Grandmaster martial artists, there was a huge gap between the strength of a great Grandmaster expert. On the other hand, if this martial Grandmaster was focused and did not underestimate him, he could put down his pride and patiently lay in ambush and assassinate a Grandmaster. In that case, there was a 99% chance that this martial scholar would not be able to escape the fate of death. While Yan Zhaoga's strength far surpassed that of ordinary Xiantian martial scholars, it was only now that danger was upon him that he vaguely sensed it. However, at the same time he sensed it, he felt a chill at the back of his head and a slight stab of pain. His opponent's sword light was already inches away from him. This was the closest Yan Zhaoga had been to death ever since he had arrived in the current Eight Extremities world. Before this, whether it was the Sacred Sun Clan's Pan Buotai, the Twilight Lord and the others, or the Ghost Hatchet Elder Han Sheng, the Crimson Spirit Flag Master, and the others, everyone's cultivation base was higher than this ambusher's. However, whether it was because he had long since planned and prepared for it, or perhaps he had not directly faced it head-on, while Yan Zhaoga appeared to be in danger, he was actually as stable as a mountain. It was only this time that Yan Zhaoga could clearly feel the shadow of death gradually looming over his heart. His opponent's sword wasn't very fast, nor was it very powerful, but it was too well hidden. By the time Yan Zhaoga discovered it, the tip of the sword had already almost reached his skin. However fast Yan Zhaoga's movement techniques were, it was already too late for him to evade. Although he had the lofty mountain armor, a defensive spirit artifact, it was the spirit artifact that was trying to protect him. Time was also a bit slower. This thin line was the difference between life and death. Even though the lofty mountain armor had risen, he had already been struck by the sword. At the juncture of life and death, while Yan Zhaoga was shocked, he did not panic. Any unnecessary and messy thoughts had completely disappeared. Yan Zhaoga's mind was highly concentrated. There was only one thought left in his mind, activated at full speed. Eye of the Thunder Emperor. Virtually at the same time that the sword light touched his body, Yan Zhaoga felt an intense stabbing pain in his right eye. A purplish-green light shot out from within Yan Zhaoga's right eye. A great amount of pure thunder chi instantly circulated throughout Yan Zhaoga's entire body. It stimulated every acupoint in his body, every single bone, every meridian, every piece of flesh. In an instant, Yan Zhaoga erupted with a speed that far surpassed his normal standards, his body shooting forward like a bolt of lightning. Taking a step forward, the sneak attack from behind missed. Even so, on the back of Yan Zhaoga's head, his broken and scattered hair fluttered in the air, and a small drop of blood could be vaguely seen on his skin. After missing with his sword, that martial grandmaster was unrelenting as he immediately increased his force, chasing closely behind Yan Zhaoga, the sword in his hand stabbing towards him once more. However, after having avoided the most dangerous and concealed sneak attack of the first sword, Yan Zhaoge had already stabilized his footing. His entire body's aura qi turned icy cold as he executed an ocean-stabilizing spirit fist. Yan Zhaoge's entire body resembled a spirit turtle concealed within the abyss, all things returning to it. Hidden within, not a trace of it could be seen. Even with that martial grandmaster's spiritual sense, he was slightly dazed for a moment, feeling as though Yan Zhaoge had completely vanished from before his eyes. He concentrated. Locking onto Yan Zhaoge's position once more, he continued stabbing out with his sword. However, two glows of red and yellow flickered on Yan Zhaoge's body at this moment, an armor that resembled a lofty mountain appearing, blocking the other party's sword. The first spurt of energy, the second decline, the third exhaustion. That martial grandmaster's sword was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Currently, it was no longer able to break through the defense of the lofty mountain armor. The light of thunder flickered within Yan Zhaoge's right eye once more as he stomped on the ground, his entire body spinning as he struck out with a palm towards the other party's head. His earlier body's aura qi that had been condensed like 10,000-year-old ice instantly blazed, as hot as fire, erupting with a terrifying power that shook one's soul, resembling the eruption of a volcano. Yan Zhaoge's strength surpassed his expectations, causing the other party to be caught somewhat unprepared. He had already overestimated Yan Zhaoge as much as he could before making his move, but he had not thought that in the end he would still have underestimated Yan Zhaoge. The sneak attacker had already used up his moves, and with Yan Zhaoge's speed and explosive power also being too strong, Yan Zhaoge was instantly able to close in on him. However, he was still a martial grandmaster expert at the end of the day. Without the slightest hesitation, he also struck out with a palm towards Yan Zhaoge's head. The palm's momentum was forceful and domineering, causing the surrounding roiling devilish qi to gather together, its power increasing as it resembled a devil king descending into the world. The powerful momentum caused even Yan Zhaoge's cultivation base to be unable to breathe freely for a moment. However, the sneak attacker suddenly came to his senses. Meeting Yan Zhaoge's cold gaze, he saw the purplish-green light of thunder within Yan Zhaoge's right eye growing more and more piercing. This martial grandmaster hesitated slightly for a moment. In such an intense battle, such hesitation was undoubtedly a fatal taboo, especially when Yan Zhaoge was definitely not someone that ordinary martial scholars could compare to. After hesitating for a moment, that sneak attacker finally chose not to continue his attack, instead choosing to retreat. However, under this situation, Yan Zhaoge's palm became even more violent. The edge of his palm swept past the enemy's shoulder. The illusory purplish-red Tushita flame formed of his aura qi exploding, using the aura qi on the enemy's clothes as fuel, transforming into actual flames that blazed fiercely and never extinguished. That martial grandmaster did not utter a sound, continuing to retreat, not even looking back as he brought along the purplish-red Tushita flame on his shoulder that had still yet to be extinguished, concealing himself within the darkness once more. The light of thunder flickered slightly within Yan Zhaoge's right eye as he remained silent, his spiritual sense raised to the maximum as he carefully guarded against everything in his surroundings, preventing his opponent from launching another sneak attack. The two clashed in the time it took for sparks to fly off a flint. In the blink of an eye, it had already been a life and death battle. Only when that martial grandmaster had retreated did the Pan by the side let out an enraged roar, staring fixedly in the direction in which the other party had retreated. Yan Zhaoge stopped Pan, standing back to back with him, silently remaining vigilant for a moment. Only after confirming that the other party had completely left did he cease his fist momentum. Who exactly is it? The other party's appearance flashed through Yan Zhaoge's mind. His entire body was enveloped in a black robe, a black cloak concealing him. Not only was he wearing a hood on his head, there was also a jet black mask on his face, making it hard to distinguish his appearance. It was only through the 2 holes on the mask that a pair of dark yellow pupils could be seen, flickering with a mournful red light, showing that this was a fallen practitioner. Concealing his identity? Someone I know. Yen Zhaoge frowned, but there is no point. It is just that the devilish intent within his heart has grown stronger, not having merged with the devilish qi inside and outside, completely falling to the dark side. Completely falling to the dark side is irreversible. As soon as the devilish intent within his heart merges with the devilish qi of the outside world, completely falling to the dark side, there is no longer any possibility of continuing to remain concealed. His identity would be equivalent to having been exposed. So what is the point of concealing it? Chapter 184. Yen Zhaoge patted Pan Pan, resuming their journey as he pondered. That person just now held back some of his strength. Are you also afraid of exposing your identity? But there's no need. He's already completely fallen to the devil. Could it be that he has a way to transform from a demon back into a human? Yen Zhaoge raised his brows slightly. It is just that seeing how he is extremely compatible with the devilish qi of this devilish domain, he has probably fallen to the dark side, not just for a short period of time, but for many years. Yen Zhaoge shook his head, temporarily suppressing his doubts as he focused on distinguishing the path before him, continuing forward. After walking for a while, Yen Zhaoge's heart suddenly jolted. Even though there were layers upon layers of demonic energy obstructing his senses, he could still vaguely sense that there were people fighting not too far away. Yen Zhaoge hurriedly sped forward for a while. Within the black fog, spiritual lights very quickly flickered, crisscrossing as the heavens and earth were overturned. The surging demonic qi in the surroundings was constantly being shattered. Seeing that flickering sword light, Yen Zhaoge raised his brows. Senior apprentice brother Su and Tang Yonghao? When Yen Zhaoge retracted his aura and neared, he saw the 3 of them exchanging blows within the black fog, fighting nonstop. Looking over, Yen Zhaoge could not help but sigh at how enemies often crossed each other's path. One of them was the masked man in black who attacked him just now, and on the other side, the 2 heavens-favored sons of Broad Creed Mountain and the Sacred Sun Clan, Su Fei and Tang Yonghao, were currently joining hands to battle with that masked black-clothed man. The 2 of them had never worked together to fight an enemy, but they had been rivals since they were young. However, this was the first time they had joined hands to face an enemy, and yet they displayed complete, tacit understanding, as if they had been brothers who had worked together for many years. Xue Fei and Tang Yonghao teamed up, one attacking and one defending, one attacking and one strange. Xue Fei's sword and palm techniques were unparalleled, displaying the Great Heaven and Earth sword technique and Great Heaven and Earth palm technique at the same time. It was powerful and imposing, simple and heavy, and it was impenetrable. Tang Yonghao held a sword in his hand, and the sky was filled with sword light. Even in the dark demon domain, it seemed like it brought light to the surroundings. Su and Tang were both at the peak of the reaching heaven stage. He was only 1 step away from the great Grandmaster realm. Also, they were the elites of Broad Creed Mountains and the Sacred Sun Clan's direct disciples, indisputably favored by heaven, far from what other heavenly connection stage martial practitioners could compare to. At this moment, the 2 of them joined hands to fight the enemy. Their tacit understanding of each other increased their power. However, their opponents were obviously not simple characters. While he had been wary of Yen Zhaoge's Eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment, having retreated immediately after his sneak attack had failed to achieve a sure kill effect, that black-clothed, masked man's strength, amongst martial practitioners of the same cultivation level, was undoubtedly an outstanding existence. At this moment, he was fighting one against two. He still had strength to spare when fighting Xue Fei and Tang Yonghao. As a fallen evil, his strength was amplified in the demonic domain. Yan Zhaoge looked coldly at that black-clothed masked man, calling out softly, "Pan Pan!" At this moment, Pan Pan's mind was connected with Yan Zhaoge's as his entire body ignited with white flames. These white flames contracted and condensed, finally turning into a milky white flame. The white tongue of flame was like a tiny, leaping sprite, extremely disproportionate to Pan Pan's massive body. However, it was filled with a destructive power that caused one's heart to palpitate. Yan Zhaoge wielded the jade dragon sword, the purplish-green light of thunder flashing within his right eye. His entire body's aura chi turned blazing hot like flames. His explosive power was instantly raised to the maximum. The next moment, Yan Zhaoge merged with his sword, his entire person soaring into the air, transforming into a streak of jade light along with the jade dragon sword, chopping towards that black-clothed, masked man. Above the jade light, the crimson light of fire lit up countless bolts of thunderbolts lashing out unceasingly. Within the illusory heaven and earth formed of Yan Zhaoge's aura chi, a green dragon appeared, its entire body shrouded by thunder and fire. Its momentum shocked the heavens. At the same time, Pan Pan let out a low roar, that milky white flame also shooting towards that black-clothed masked man at an extremely fast speed, resembling a shooting star. Flame thunderbolt. Yan Zhaoge's sword light resembled a dragon, instantly ripping apart the dense black fog, striking towards that martial grandmaster along with Pan Pan's flame thunderbolt. While they were in the midst of an intense battle, the opponent was a martial grandmaster at the end of the day, also fighting in the demonic domain. With his powerful sensory abilities, he immediately sensed the approach of Yan Zhaoge and Pan Pan. Not saying a word, Yan Zhaoge immediately made his move, his attacks even more violent than before. Xue Fei and Tang Yonghao similarly did not stand on ceremony, grasping their chance decisively as they simultaneously struck out with their swords, attacking towards this black-clothed martial grandmaster with the momentum of toppling mountains and overturning seas. Faced with the combined attacks of the three young experts, this masked opponent's sword-wielding wrist unconsciously twitched, but very quickly he restrained his movements, retreating once more, retreating rapidly. It was just that the attacks of Yan Zhaoge's trio and Pan Pan were all extremely tyrannical. As the other party retreated, guided by his aura, he attacked with a momentum that surged to the heavens. A muffled groan resounded within the air. This powerful martial grandmaster had already been injured by Yan Zhaoge and the others. However, he was also truly powerful. Making use of the devilish domain's geographical advantage, he fled speedily. With this person intent on fleeing, it would be very hard for Yan Zhaoge and the others to keep him here. Yan Zhaoge kept the jade dragon sword, descending to the ground, his gaze on Xue Fei and Tang Yonghao. In the distance, Si Kongqing, who knew that she was not strong enough and had wisely not approached to help, now also walked over. Seeing Yan Zhaoge's gaze on Tang Yonghao, Xue Fei immediately said, "It was junior apprentice sister Sikong, and I who were attacked. Passing by, senior apprentice brother Tang lent us a helping hand." Tang Yonghao said calmly, "The 9 underworlds and the decimating abyss are the common enemies of our 8 extremities world." He was also not a stubborn and inflexible person. If it had been a martial grandmaster expert of the Sacred Sun clan or the Heavenly Thunder Hall who had clashed with Xue Fei, while Tang Yonghao might not have liked it, he would not use his own standards to demand others. Xue Fei was an elite of Broad Creed Mountain's younger generation, his future prospects limitless. If his clan's seniors or allied Heavenly Thunder Hall experts wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible, Tang Yonghao would not listen to orders to surround and attack them, but he would also not go forward to stop them. However, if it was an unexpected natural disaster, or if it was a common enemy of the Eight Extremities world like the Flame Devils or the Nine Underworlds who posed danger to Xue Fei, Tang Yonghao would not hesitate in the slightest to lend a helping hand, even if he and Xue Fei were to engage in a heaven-shaking, earth-overturning battle afterwards. Only one of them would live. Looking at Tang Yonghao, Yan Zhaoge nodded slowly. I thank Senior Apprentice Brother Tang for lending a helping hand. Tang Yonghao sighed, smiling. Junior Apprentice Brother, Yan speaks too seriously. Rather, it was Junior Apprentice Brother Yan's sword just now that was truly brilliant, greatly broadening my horizons. Yan Zhaoge knew that this person was somewhat obsessed with martial arts, so he also smiled slightly. Senior Apprentice Brother Tang overpraises me. Looking at their surroundings, Yan Zhaoge asked, Senior Apprentice Brother Tang is here. I wonder if your fellow disciples, Tang Yonghao answered. Junior Apprentice Brother Huang Jie is taking care of them, while I was separated from them when we fell into this domain of devilish qi. I was currently searching for them earlier. Hearing his words, Yan Zhaoge narrowed his eyes slightly into slits. Tang Yonghao's words just now had inadvertently revealed a lot of information. To be continued. Chapter 185. Despite Tang Yonghao's casual reply, Yan Zhaoge was able to discern many things from it. Firstly, Huang Jie had indeed concealed his strength. His cultivation was definitely not low. Secondly, Huang Jie was most likely not the black-clothed great grandmaster who had launched a sneak attack on him and Xue Fei, unless all the other Sacred Sun Clan disciples who had fallen into the devilish domain this time all died, in which case Huang Jie's suspicions would rise sharply. Rubbing his brows, Yan Zhaoge continued asking, when we fell from Hovering Sky Island earlier, I saw that you were together with those of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, Senior Apprentice Brother Tang. How are they? Tang Yonghao said, there was no danger when we landed, and no one fell into the black hole. But when we were swallowed by the Devil's Domain, we were separated from Junior Brother Xie. Afterwards, we met a martial grandmaster of the Heavenly Thunder Hall who had hurried over to reinforce the decimating Abyss martial practitioners. Junior Apprentice Sister Chenlin and the others left with that senior, while I went to look for Junior Apprentice Brother Huang and the others. As he spoke, Tang Yonghao raised his left hand. There was a small pendant on his wrist. In the dark demonic domain, it shone like sunlight. With this, I can try to locate Junior Brother Huang and the others. However, it will be much more difficult in the demon domain. Yan Zhaoge nodded, Su Fei asking, Zhaoge, what do you plan to do now? Oh, I actually intend to enter the depths of Clear Concealed Lake, the central region of that black formation. After glancing at Tang Yonghao, Yan Zhaoge said candidly. Xue Fei and Tang Yonghao were both slightly surprised. What do you want? Yan Zhaoge explained. An accident has clearly occurred in the plans of our clan's seniors. This means that there are spies from the 9 underworlds among the higher-ups of our 6 sacred grounds. Therefore, our plan was used by the enemy, and our backup plan was also in danger of being leaked. The decimating abyss will not be unguarded. A cold light flickered slightly within Yan Zhaoge's eyes. Therefore, I am prepared to add some variables to them, adding a little spice to this big dish of theirs. As for how a martial scholar like Yan Zhaoge could add variables to a battle at the level of martial grandmasters, Su Fei and Tang Yonghao did not ask. Su Fei looked straight at Yan Zhaoge. I can't let you take the risk alone. I'll go with you. He looked at Yan Zhaoge. I heard that you, Zhaoge, obtained a fragment of a sacred artifact. Perhaps you really have the ability to make a sudden breakthrough. In all fairness, no matter if it's me or Senior Brother Tang, it's beyond our power to intervene in the battle between high-level martial grandmasters. But right now, in the demon domain, Aside from the high-level martial grandmasters, there are also many other martial grandmasters from the Decimating Abyss organization, as well as middle and low-level martial grandmasters, such as that person just now. I'm untalented and can't help much in the big picture. However, it can help you save some time and energy on the road, especially when it comes to preserving the power of the Saint Weapon fragment. After all, it's just a fragment, not a true Saint Weapon. If it uses up its power, it will most likely need some time to recover. Tang Yonghao similarly said emotionally, "Count me in." With the big picture at hand and the situation pressing down, Yan Zhaoge didn't bother with pleasantries as he immediately nodded. "Since that's the case, I first thank you two senior apprentice brothers." Saying thus, Yan Zhaoge patted Pan Pan. "Bring junior apprentice sister Sikong along and hide her carefully, waiting for our clan's seniors to reinforce us or for the dust to settle." The usually cold Sikong Qing. A rarely seen, vexed look appeared within her gaze. It wasn't that she was vexed that Yan Zhaoge and Su Fei didn't bring her along, but that her cultivation base was too low, not being able to help under such circumstances, instead becoming a burden. Looking at her, Yan Zhaoge said, "We're going to continue venturing deeper. Bringing you along would instead be more dangerous." Junior apprentice sister Sikong, with Pan Pan protecting you, as long as you don't meet martial grandmasters or heavenly connection martial scholars, it'll be fine. However, with so many enemies here, it's best that you remain cautious. Sucking in a deep breath, Sikong Qing had already completely regained her calm as she nodded. "Rest easy, senior apprentice brother Yen. I understand. You guys be careful too." Yan Zhaoge patted Pan Pan's big head. Ahu and Pan Pan are also very familiar with each other. Within the devilish domain, we can still barely find them. After so long, if they haven't met with enemies, they shouldn't be too far away. My time is tight, and I won't be able to wait for Ahu. However, you guys can wait for him. After meeting up with Ahu, as long as you don't meet a martial grandmaster, you guys won't be in danger. Don't stay where you are, lest that guy from just now return. Pan Pan was a little reluctant to leave, but Yan Zhaoge shook his head at him. The big fella could only bring Sikong Qing along in another direction, feeling wronged. Yan Zhaoge and the others immediately moved. Only when the time comes for knowledge will one regret not having enough. After this matter, I definitely have to study formations properly. Yan Zhaoge's attainments in formations far surpassed martial practitioners of the same cultivation level. However, if the one controlling the formation was a martial grandmaster, the difference in their cultivation bases, the difference in their control over formations, as well as their ability to deduce them, would not be so easily made up for. Projecting along the way, Yan Zhaoge brought Su Fei and Tang Yonghao along deep into the devilish domain. While they were surrounded by layers upon layers of devilish qi, the three could still feel the intense clashes of energy as well as the fluctuations of spiritual qi in the outside world. It was clear that the great battle was still ongoing and had already reached its climax. While the decimating abyss had made use of the advantage of a spy to successfully reverse the situation, it seemed that their overall strength was still rather weak. However, as time passed, the domain of devilish qi grew more and more stable, and that terrifying aura originating from the 9 underworlds also grew more and more terrifying. If it could not be resolved as soon as possible, as the crevice to the 9 underworlds truly opened, the situation would definitely take a turn for the worse in an instant. The martial practitioners of the various sacred grounds all clearly understood this. Their attacks grew fiercer and fiercer, their violent power unceasingly stirring up the domain of devilish qi. As the three of them walked, a massive stream of black light suddenly lit up before their eyes, tens of thousands of runes circulating unceasingly. This was one of the spirit patterns of that massive black light formation at the bottom of clear concealed lake. The thick spirit pattern, under the influence of an external force, suddenly collapsed. With this collapse, the domain of devilish chi in the vicinity also collapsed, along with it, numerous massive chasms being ripped apart. Yan Zhaoge and the others were instantly harmed greatly by this sudden turn of events, as the three simultaneously plummeted towards the deep abyss down below. Unexpected situations never cease. Yan Zhaoge shook his head slightly. Under the disturbance of the devilish chi, it was hard for him to use his aura chi to float in the air. However, this did not stump Yan Zhaoge. While it was a little inappropriate in front of Tang Yonghao, he still waved his hand. The spirit artifact, the radiant sun wheel, flying out in an arc. Yan Zhaoge tapped on the radiant sun wheel, shooting out of the deep abyss, as the radiant sun wheel flew back into his hands in an arc. On the other side, Xue Fei and Tang Yonghao also jumped out of the abyss. However, the abyssal chasm continued to expand, and surging demonic chi surged out from it, separating the three of them. The demonic domain twisted, and the distance between the three grew further and further. Soon, it was hard to see each other. Yan Zhaoge shook his head, his heart jolting slightly as he turned to look. In the distance, a figure was slowly walking towards them. To be continued. Chapter 186. Looking at the newcomer, Yan Zhaoge raised his brows slightly. He saw that the newcomer was in his 30s or 40s. He had a head full of strange and rare red hair, and he wore something that looked like boxing gloves on his hands. The other party's pupils were yellow and shot out rays of blood-red light. He was also a fallen evil. What caught Yan Zhaoge's attention was the fact that behind this red-haired martial practitioner's back, a few lines of blood vaguely extended out, one end penetrating deep into the domain of devilish chi that resembled black fog, the other end connecting to his body. Having sensed Yan Zhaoge's aura, the red-haired martial practitioner had come over to investigate. After clearly seeing Yan Zhaoge's appearance, the red-haired martial practitioner instantly revealed a look of joy as a bloodthirsty glow could not be concealed within his eyes. Yendi's son, Yan Zhaoge? The red-haired cultivator grinned. Although I know that you are here to participate in the Heavenly Connection meet, I really did not expect my luck to be so good to be able to meet you directly. Yan Zhaoge blinked. I shouldn't have seen you before. I am Xue Wuya. The red-haired martial artist exercised his gloved hands. That's right. We've never met before. It's not surprising that you don't recognize me. As long as I recognize you, that's enough. You don't recognize me, but perhaps you recognize this. As he spoke, Xue Wuya threw a punch in the air. The rolling gang chi turned into an illusory world. In that illusion, rolling waves surged unceasingly, covering the sky and covering the earth. The ominous thing was that the seawater in the illusory world was black, and it made one feel gloomy and cold. Yan Zhaoge came to a realization. 5 spirit flags, the martial arts of the black spirit flag lineage. You are a remnant of the 5 spirit flags. The 5 spirit flags were a first-rate force that had been active at the border of the heaven and wind regions in the past. Because their sins of slaughter had been too great, even having massacred a city in the West Heaven region of the Heaven Domain, they had encountered resistance from a first-rate power that was subordinate to Broad Creed Mountain. The two sides had engaged in a great battle, with casualties on both sides. Coincidentally, Yan Zhaoge's father, Yan Di, had passed by. In the end, all the 5 spirit flags martial practitioners present, the chief flag lord included, had been slain by Yan Di. The 5 spirit flags were not present at that time. Those disciples who had been scattered outside had been spared, fleeing far away to avoid being encircled and annihilated. Afterwards, they hated Yan Di to the bone, yet could do nothing about it. Previously in the eastern Tang Dragon Sealing Abyss in the Heaven region. As a result, Some Crimson Spirit Flag Masters set their target of vengeance on Yen Zhaoge. My luck is really too good. Looking at Yen Zhaoge, that Shui Wuya laughed savagely. Yen Zhaoge smiled, shaking his head. No, it's just that my luck is too good. His eyes fell on the lines of blood on Shui Wuya's body. The big formation at the bottom of the lake, you are one of the people who participated in setting up the formation, right? He sacrificed his own blood essence to the array. Let the formation take shape quickly. As for your own essence, energy, and spirit, they are one with the formation. You cannot stray far from the core of the formation. The fact that I can see you here means that I'm not far from the core of the formation. If I follow the bloodlines on your back, I can quickly find the core of the formation. Shui Wuya laughed. Even if you find it, what can you do? Recently, it has been rumored that you have a fragment of a holy weapon. However, even if it is a fragment, it still contains the power of a holy weapon. How much of its power can you activate? After all, there is only one extreme in Crown. Staring at Yen Zhaoge, a crazed look appeared within Shui Wuya's eyes. Even if you can activate the power of the holy artifact fragment, how many times can you do so? If you use it on me, what will you use to shake the core of the formation? At that time, the formation will be fully activated, the great door to the great 9 underworlds opening completely, and you will still die. Shui Wuya laughed loudly. Being able to exchange my life for that dog Yen Di, sending off his son, it's also worth it. Yen Zhaoge looked at him, rather amusedly. After you fell to the dark side, your mind seems to have not been too clear. Who said that I would have to rely on the holy artifact fragment to kill you? Looking coldly at Yen Zhaoge, Shui Wuya's eyes were filled with a crazed, bloodthirsty glow. Those who are not clear-headed. It's you. I heard that in the Heavenly Connection meet, you consecutively defeated Infinite Boundless Mountains Lu Shengfeng and the Heavenly Thunder Halls Xie Zi. As both late Xiantian martial saints, I admit that I am inferior to Xie Zi. However, that was before I joined the 9 underworlds. The current me is not inferior to him. Flexing his wrists, Shui Wuya strode towards Yen Zhaoge. And now, within the devilish domain, my strength is even greater than when I was outside, while you have to split your attention to resist the invasion of the devilish qi. Weakening, strengthening, do you think that your current situation is very easy? Accompanied by his stride, roiling Orochi surged, forming an illusory scene above his head, his fist intent and Orochi intermingling to form an illusory heaven and earth. The black great sea within the illusory heaven and earth actually underwent a change. Once more, the black sea turning into a sea of blood, brutal to the heavens. The blood-red tide obscured the heavens and covered the earth, emanating an incomparably foul stench as it truly resembled hell on earth. Yen Zhaoge revealed an expression that looked like he was smiling whilst also not, as he said mildly, speaking of Xie Zi, it looks like you still don't know. Xie Zi, he was like you before, also falling to the dark side. Shui Wuya was momentarily taken aback before he laughed loudly. The direct descendants of your 6 great sacred grounds, claiming to be the favored sons of heaven, are also merely SOO. Yen Zhaoge continued. Afterwards, he had the same thoughts as you, feeling that after falling to the dark side, he should be able to defeat me. Afterwards, he died. Shui Wuya's yellowed pupils dilated slightly. Looking at him, Yen Zhaoge smiled slightly. I killed him. As his words left his mouth, Yen Zhaoge's figure abruptly flashed, striding out as he was already before Shui Wuya. Shui Wuya had already instinctively felt that something was wrong, but now that Yen Zhaoge had made a move, he also did not dare to retreat, only able to brace himself and meet him head-on, punching out with both fists towards Yen Zhaoge. However, amidst the violent purplish-red blazing flames, an illusory pill furnace opened, its lid a massive ape punching out with a power that shook the heavens and overturned the earth. The boundless sea of blood was forcibly torn apart. The next moment, before Shwe Wuya's eyes, specks of numerous stars lit up. Within the dark night sky, 7 stars hung high, illuminating the north. Shwe Wuya roared madly, drawing on all his strength to meet Yen Zhaoge, the shattered sea of blood transforming into an all-encompassing rain of blood, combining with the countless fist shadows, descending continuously. The gloves on his hands flickered with a strange, spiritual light. However, the jade dragon sword within Yen Zhaoge's palm roared. Accompanied by the changes in his sword intent, countless stars circulated, as though the trajectories of the actual stars within the horizon were shifting and changing. A jade-green river of stars descended from the sky, keeping the fist shadows of the rain of blood at bay, hard-pressed to approach. The river of stars flowed downwards, piercing through Shwe Wuya's chest. Shwe Wuya stared wide-eyed, looking at Yen Zhaoge in death with remaining grievances. Before this, he had only heard that Yen Zhaoge had defeated Lu Shengfeng and Xie Zi, but had not personally witnessed it at the end of the day, not knowing the specifics of the battle. He had completely not thought that Yen Zhaoge's strength would actually be powerful to such an extent, leaving him completely unable to match up to him. However, Yen Zhaoge's attention was not placed on Shwe Wuya. Shwe Wuya had already fallen to the dark side. After his death, his corpse would dissipate. Meanwhile, the thread of blood behind his back that extended into the black fog also broke apart, looking like it was about to disappear. Yen Zhaoge brandished his sword once more. 7 streaks of sword light locked down, that thread of blood that was about to be retracted into the black fog, to be continued